Yeah, we should. Sure.
Okay. At this point, I'd like to call the regular monthly meeting of the Salem Board of Education to order. It is 6:01 PM. Would people please stand for the pledge? For the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome. I think we're going to start off on a very good note tonight.
So I just would like to thank you to our audience for just kind of bearing with us. I think you'll enjoy this. I did not put it on the agenda because Mr. Eastman and I weren't sure if it was going to quite come together because they're practicing space, all of these types of things, and could we get everybody here? But we wanted to give you a little teaser and talk about the show. And so turning it over to Mr. Eastman.
So I'm Mr. Eastman, I'm Zach Eastman. I'm the band director here. I also direct the high school musical. This year we are doing Groundhog Day. If you've seen the early 90s Bill Murray, Andy McDowell movie, it's based off of that movie. It is PG-13, so please keep that in mind when you're coming. Tonight is completely G though. Some of you can test up a little bit when I said that. No, tonight is G, but the show is PG-13, so please be advised if you do come see. These kids are doing a wonderful job. If you don't know the story, basically what happens is a very egotistical and not very nice person, Phil Connors, he's a weatherman and he gets sent to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania to cover the groundhog seeing his shadow or not. And while there, he gets stuck and wakes up every morning to the same exact day, Groundhog Day, which is one of his least favorite days in the world, over and over and over again. And at first he thinks he's going insane, and then he realizes that with no tomorrow, there is no consequence, so he starts behaving badly. And then after he gets bored of that, he falls into a deep depression because he can't figure out how to get out of this funk. And then eventually he confides in a coworker who helps him realize, like she says, that if she was in that position, she would be using it to better herself and better the community around her. And Phil takes that advice and slowly transforms from this egotistical jerk into a nice human being. Before we start though, I asked one of our students what I should say up here tonight, and her response was amazing, so I wanted to share that with you. She talked about why drama club is amazing to her, and she mentioned the diversity of the students in this room. There's not many opportunities in school where seniors are working alongside seventh grade students, and that opportunity to see for the younger kids to learn and grow with the older kids, and the older kids to share their experiences, not just in terms of like skills on the stage, but in terms of like how you interact with other people and your peers and working together. It's a wonderful opportunity for them. Also, not just the age difference, but the types of kids that we have in here. Very few of these kids are just drama club kids. We have quite a few band and chorus kids. We also have kids who are doing, like literally just ran here from their athletic practices. We have kids involved in FFA and farm kids. We have kids that are tech kids involved in those programs, Spanish club, kids from all over with varying interests and varying backgrounds that are working together. And it's really cool to see. So without further ado, this is tomorrow from Groundhog Day. It's toward the opening of the show. Phil has not arrived in Punxsutawney yet, but we've already realized that he is kind of a jerk. But this is our first opportunity to see the townspeople and what life is like in their small town. Come on in.
And again, I'm gonna stand behind you so y'all see me, but don't be bothered. Aaron, that is not switched on. Can you turn it off?
Don't worry, you don't have to talk.
I was born. Here comes the coming dawn. The sunrise on the sunless day. I won't be a saying that folks round here always say. And girls, and girls go brown. What would be bread? And really start. Picture it in stone. It'll be start tomorrow. Or tomorrow. Or tomorrow. So. Will come. There will be blue skies and rain. Rising rain. Tomorrow. Perhaps today.
Oh, when my God and its clouds away. The star. Oh, where my God. Time. I'm trying to come. So time. Tomorrow.
Bright eyes and light. Oh. Tomorrow. Perhaps today. Still waking up.
So excited. It was like having a front row seat. I'm sure everybody can agree. It's like so exciting. We can't wait to see the show. Thank you, Mr. Eastman.
Thank you very much for having
Thank
me.
you, everybody. for
Thank
being
you.
here.
It's
It'll be a great way to start and get a little teaser and get everybody in here to see the whole thing.
When is it
So-
again?
The dates are the sixth, seventh, and eighth. The sixth and seventh are at 7 p.m. and the eighth is a Sunday matinee at 2 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, awesome. So we'll give them a, so boy, how to follow that of talking about roofs. This is like amazing, you know, like. You feel like you've got a lot to overcome now. All right, so as they're leaving, we have a presentation. As you know, we have been discussing that we have our roofs. We've had a couple problem areas. This is our year for our building conditions survey to be done and reported to New York State. So typically it was every 5 years, but during COVID they were pushed back. So this is our first building condition survey post-COVID, getting back on the regular schedule. And because the owls are chirping, we're doing, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, they got unplugged from the, so, back on track. So because we knew, so Paul's here, as well tonight, Paul Yakovic, our Director of Facilities, and, because we knew that we were having some problem areas, we do have a few leaks. If you've ever been in our gym for a game after it rains, so we do have a couple buckets. Which is quite concerning because, you know, we have that beautiful brand new gym. And, so the building conditions survey provided us the opportunity also as part of that to have a roof scan done, a moisture scan, and the architects can talk a little bit about that. So although the full building conditions report is not fully complete, so we have it ready to be uploaded to New York State, and Mosaic, who completed it, will provide us with more of a comprehensive report of what some of our areas of concern and or giving us the opportunity to make some priorities. But in the meantime, we do need to address the roof situation. I've had some discussions with the board about looking to see if it was possible to get some of our areas of concern done with the remaining it's about 4.1 million from the previous capital project that was not borrowed. So the budget came in a bit under, the budget was a little more than what we spent. So we have this 4.1 that we can still borrow. The roofs were targeted in that, so we are eligible to continue with some roof work through that. So we talked to Mosaic, and Schoolhouse are here to take us through the roof scan. So we have Mark Rivers here from Schoolhouse, and we have our Mosaic team. I'll let you introduce yourselves when you come up. So you'll be speaking, and there's more of you. So everybody will keep your name straight. So I'll welcome you up to the podium. So these plans are on, they are attached to the agenda if you want to pull them up electronically and review them. But it is a little bit to print them all out, multiple copies, not knowing how many people we have. So we did put it up on the Promethean tonight, and you can review those online. I know we have some people here, and so we will be talking about it. So the board does have a print copy in front of them, just so that if you have specific areas you want to talk about, I know that they're going to point that out. So I'm going to turn it over to Mosaic. Come on up and introduce yourselves, and we'll take it away. And I'm going to come over here and I'll work the board as necessary.
Well, I can certainly say that we're not going to bore you with a building condition survey tonight. We're just going to talk about roofing from what we saw that we've experienced over the last 4 or 5 years, and what's becoming more apparent and needy from what we did over the past summer. So we were here in July and August, completed that survey, and like Superintendent said, it's ready to be uploaded. But we kind of talked a little bit at that time about the roofing need, because obviously there's some areas that are leaking in the building.
John, sorry to interrupt you. Do you want to talk about, Callie's addition and your?
Oh, yeah.
You have good news, bad news.
Well, I got some good news. Actually, I got some really good news tonight. Introduce myself, John Jojo. I've been a partner here, running the district probably for 5 or 6 years now. The good news is that you're going to start working with my partner, Kelly Gaspari, moving into the new year, because I'm retiring. So that is great news as far as I'm concerned. And then Todd Vogel, Todd's been here as long as I have, so the continuity is going to be maintained. And tonight we're basically going to run through with you what we saw from the building condition survey, what we found through the roof scan process. And then I'm going to turn it over to Todd. He's going to talk to you about dollars and cents, because obviously everything comes down to that, and you'll have to make some decisions. And, whether or not we answer all your questions tonight, which we can, but if you want to go away and start analyze it, we can certainly come back, or have these folks come back and talk to you more in depth about that. And because obviously we have a couple options, that doesn't mean there's only 2 options. We can always do an a la carte if we have to.
And so we're just going to specifically talk about the roofs tonight.
Correct. So on your handout, whether or not so what you've got in front of you is my handout in orange, okay? And there's some white areas, but the white areas represent work that has already been done, and your slate roofs, which we're not going to be touching now, because as I had been saying for all the years, the slate is getting old, but it does not need to be replaced in probably our lifetime. You probably still have another, probably 30 or 40 years. You're going to have to replace some sections, no doubt. You're gonna get a leak or you get a crack every now and then. But the majority area of the roof is in fine condition. So it's really the flat areas that really what we want to concentrate on and figure out how we get those done in the near future. So from your handout, the orange area represents all your flat areas, okay? And then you'll start seeing colors of maybe orange and some hatched areas that need to be addressed. But the orange or red areas are actually are wet insulation. Which is probably why we know there's a leak over the gym, which is the 7R area. And then we have some other areas like over the cafeteria, which is the 4R area, which we know that there's some of the sheetrock is wet. And then some other insulation areas, which it may not have leaked down into some corridors or classrooms themselves. But you know, it's on its way based upon what we're seeing here. Some areas are, because of the way the foam roofs are, they do hold moisture. So as the water penetrates, if there's a place for it to go, it's going to settle out. Kind of think of it like a water bed almost. It will hold moisture for a while before it starts leaking through the deck and into the building itself. So the orange area is the entire magnitude of the work that we'd like to have you start thinking about getting done. Other areas, like I said, are slate. Other areas are flat areas that we've addressed in like in 2020. But the rest of the areas obviously are going to have to be worked on over the course of, a short time frame. So Tom, I'm turn this over to Todd, and he's got a few options for you to consider. And then obviously there's a cost with it, and we can start talking about what those costs look like and what other still unknowns that we currently have. And I'll give you a little information about that. The reason why you have spray foam roofs is because once upon a time, long before we all came here, maybe when some of you were students in the building, you actually had built up roofs, which was basically asphalt, felt and tar sandwiched kind of together and sloped to roof drains. The tar and felt were asbestos. So instead of removing it, people thought it was best to encapsulate that at that time. So hence, now you've got spray foam roofs. So the costs and pricing that Todd's going to show you includes removing all of that down to your either metal deck or your Tectum decks or gypsum decks. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
What,
please.
what is the process that you took to determine that we had wet insulation?
So during our building condition survey, we hired a third party, WTI Trimco. And they came out and did like a nuclear scan on your roofs. So basically they come out with a machine, and they basically will do a scanner on it, and it'll actually show you wet and dry areas. And from those drawings, or from his information, he developed base drawings for us to kind of manipulate so we can project it to you.
So you found this to be a highly effective way of determining where there's damage or?
We've been using it for probably 20 to 30 years. So yes.
And some of these areas, Paul could probably tell you.
Yeah, I was up there when they did it. They took core samples of every wet area. When they took the core sample, it was sopping wet everywhere they said it would be.
It may not be this neat box that Todd drew on me, but that's the way you have to draw it.
I didn't have to draw them anymore. Some people have to. Yeah, they may not be in those shapes, but the square footages that are associated with those shapes kind of give us an indication of how much it's like.
Okay, so one of the things I asked them to do was, in the perfect world, right, how much would it cost if we just replace all of the flat roofs? I mean, ideally, that's, always something that you want to think about. We know that that's going to be more than that 4.1 million, but I think it's important for the board to just fully understand what that full cost looks like and how then they'll explain how they kind of determined why they're recommending the yellow areas in a few minutes on this other page.
So if you go to that initial drawing that we had up on the screen, the budget that's now on the screen kind of reflects every colored area on that, if that were done.
Yeah, so this is the one that has the bigger number on it.
Yes, this is the larger number. We'll start with that one. If everything was done, you would be over $8 million for your roofs. I know that says under 8 million, but there are a few line items. If you go to the second page of this, there are a few line items, if you look at lines 18 through 22, that we don't know until we get into.
Oh, it's down
Design.
below there, yeah.
There are things, such as how much insulation we have to put back. The building code has raised that up since 2020, so it gets thicker. All your wall flashings may have to be raised up on your masonry. You have a masonry building, so those flashings may need to be raised, depending on the design. Another item is, the last project. When we got into replacing some things, we found out there was some gypsum deck that was damaged sometime along the line in the past that needed to be replaced. You very easily could have that same situation as we get into exploring this roof. Whatever roof it is that is decided on. So there's a line item that's a unit cost, because a lot of times you don't see that stuff until they demo things, and then you have an issue that you have to deal with.
And the gypsum, if anybody has plaster at home, once it starts getting wet, it becomes a little punky. And it, you know, if it's vertical, that's one thing, but if it's usually flat versus a ceiling or a decking for it, basically a ceiling that's below your living area there, it actually does not have any consistency to hold itself together any longer. So we would have to start cutting those areas out and replace those.
So 18 through 22 is not included in that figure.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's unit prices for things if we need to keep insulation lower, because as you go all the way from a drain, it gets higher and higher and higher. If we need to keep insulation lower, we might have to add an extra drain to keep that lower. If we have to add an extra drain, we have to get into your ceilings inside. So there is a line item here for taking ceilings out, putting ceilings back in. And once you get underneath, the insulation that's on a drain pipe might involve asbestos removal. That's something else that has to be tested. Not included in this right now. What else do we have here? We included painting the ladder, but I think the school staff is really good at painting. That might not even be an item for this thing, but we put it on here anyways as a painting the ladder, adding the ladder to the tech roof, because you don't currently have one. I think you have to take a ladder up there to get up to that.
It's high enough, you can just climb.
Can you climb it?
Yeah.
Okay. And if we were to get into all of this, your areas that are up next to your slate, there's a unit cost for that too, because we're gonna have to take a few rows of that slate off to get the flashings to work properly together with the slate. Take off, put back on the slate. So that's another unit cost to think about as we go through this. And as the roof gets thicker with insulation, you guys have a beautiful building that has cornice work all the way around the outside of it, all that wood that's up at the top of the roof. If that gets higher, then we have to figure out how we make that look proper, fit in with your building. So there's that cost as well, that we don't know until the design starts happening. So that is very likely gonna be more than that 7.997.
Okay,
So
so, and just wanted you to have an understanding of that complete cost. And then, you know, we really talked about what's the cost if we do all of the moisture saturated areas, and or if we get close to that 4.1, is there, you know, how do we prioritize? There's some complication of just doing sections because you have to go beyond them, and I'm gonna let the experts talk about that a little bit and talk about then this partial, you know, doing the areas of concern, which are on that next one with the yellow, correct?
yes, if we go to the second drawing, as much less of what John was saying was the orange area. Those are the areas minus 3 of them that have wet insulation on that roof. The other 3 that don't have the wet insulation are adjacent to those wet areas and really should be done at the same time because of flashings that need to be dealt with and different things like that. Edge conditions of the roof, flashings at the masonry, would be considered to be done at the same time.
So those are 9 and 10.
So
9,
the
10.
ones that don't have the wet are 9, 10, and 11.
Mhm.
11 is part of your 38 original building. The rest of them are part of your 68 addition. They're different roofs, different roof structure for both of those, between those 2 things. And then over the cafeteria is a 3rd roof structure. That's metal deck on that one, and that's the one that is 4R. And if you notice that hatch, that pretty much takes up about half of that roof.
Yeah, that didn't last too long.
It's rubber roof. Was done in 2000, so it made it 24 years. Rubber roofs, depending on what the warranty is, 10, 20, 30 years. I'm gonna think the original one wasn't 30 years, so you kind of got more than what the warranty was for it. And I believe up on that roof, there are just pads, or is it stones up there that walkway pads that also protect things sliding off of the slate roof.
Slate is rubber band.
And when you get one hole, it can go anywhere, so you don't know where that hole exactly is. So we've narrowed it down to just the wet roofs, and just the wet roofs was that 3.9 number, which is on the option A budget.
And that's, but plus 18 through 22 is
Plus,
still
those
relevant.
are still relevant for this.
So I know we don't know, and, obviously Mark's would, on us because you're familiar with these areas. I know you can't say for sure, but the question is, could it be beyond 200,000, that 4.1 million?
It can be. However, it may not be. So what we did not do, because we did the scanning during the BCS, because there's an aidable component to that. We were able to get the state to help us pay for that.
Mhm.
The second part of this will help us understand before we actually get into the design is taking more roof cores down to the deck, which will tell us how thick all of the insulation areas are that we need to know. And then based upon what the new code is, that'll help us determine whether or not we have to add 3 or 4 blocking around the perimeter, which will help us tighten our budget
Okay,
to answer your question.
okay, to get us
Right.
closer
Well,
to.
here's the thing, it's, obviously, we certainly are not going to recommend taking the cores now because we're getting into the wrong time of year to do that. So I'd like to do is they obviously take those cores later in the spring when things start drying out, because somebody's got to come back and patch them right away. And we're not talking about, 1 or 2 or 3 cores. We're probably doing half a dozen to a dozen on each roof area or multiples. And one of the big things that I'm always concerned about is what the aesthetic looks like on your building. So what we're recommending is trying to, like around the gym, if we have to remove masonry and do work, I want to do it all at one time. Because, as you know, when you start doing brickwork, the mortar joints never seem to match. So we're gonna have to have in our specification where we're gonna actually have, it's not really gonna be a mason, it's gonna be a cosmetic mason that we're really looking for to hit the mortar to make sure that it matches. We're gonna have to painstakingly take the brick down so we can replace it because we can't find that brick any longer. So those are the kind of things that we want to make sure that we pay attention to. So when we finish their job, it looks kind of like the way it does today, but no leaks.
So do we move forward? Do we wait until we do all those cores, or should we, are we doing moving forward
I think we can move
simultaneously?
forward.
And then
However, I think we
possibly
may have to
something
have,
else?
an alternate on some areas.
Okay.
And as we get a little more information, I want to turn it over to the construction manager to do more pricing for us, so we can actually bounce numbers off of one another.
And can we talk about, the co-op pricing and how that could
Yep.
expedite? Could you share that with the board
Well,
about how that works
so
on the bid
We call
versus
it,
that?
you know, people know it as co-op, some people call it US community, some people call it state contract pricing, and there's a number of avenues, which is basically, it's already a pre-negotiated price that the state has approved. So we typically go out and try to do that, because usually you can work closer with your contractor. You're not just putting it out and saying that, hey, guy, give me your lowest bid. And, you know, then you gotta like fight with them all day long about potential change orders. Co-ops usually come in and unless there's a really good reason, it's usually like a fixed price. So I would say that we should get a co-op price and kind of understand what it is. And if we think we might do better in the open market, we can also have an option to bid it. And it doesn't commit you to awarding to the low bidder, but at least might be able to play one off the other. Because the last thing I want to, obviously the best, I want to do is get the best price for the district. However, it's, you know, as you know, sometimes the cheapest price isn't always the cheapest price, and it's not the best, right? So.
Okay.
So why are we moving forward with this instead of waiting until the next construction project? What's the priority here?
Well, I'm not saying you can't, I'm saying, you're gonna live with rain coming into your building. And it actually makes the process, more expensive, because now we're gonna have to, replace ceilings, because if they do dry, rot and fall in, or you may have to deal with mold remediation down the road. So there's a lot of issues that could come up, but
So I would like to add to that. So there are a couple other things. So we can talk about timing in a minute, but there's one area in 13 that is getting to be somewhat of an unsafe situation for our facilities crew when you go up there. It's very soft there. If someone is not aware or forgets, and you really have to try to avoid walking on that area because it's weak. Correct. What happens is some of this water is running, so there could be, so the gym situation, if depending, you know, we do on vacations, you know, or long weekends or holidays, we do building checks, but you always risk then with these leaks, damage to our gym, our bleachers, a lot of some of the work that we've done in other places. So that's a consideration. We did not have the realization until the scan, that really more than half of the cafeteria roof is problematic. We're starting to lose tiles on those ceilings, correct? The other piece of it is, in order to, in my opinion, and, you know, certainly we have, people who have been through Karen, we've had some people here, you know, we really want to make use of our next project, I would like to, we need to consider the building conditions survey fully to look at what are some essential or on the short list, right? And be able to prioritize, here's the short list for the next project, and here's maybe something for another 3 or 5 years out after that. But also, I really think we need to come back and have some time to do some really community work with our internal school community, our parents, our families, our community members, to like, what are our hopes and dreams, and what are some of the things that can benefit educational programming, that can benefit and or possibly the community, and to really, you know, fields, other things that take some time to work through and to have a very thoughtful process, which, you know, to really do a good job with that, I think you're talking close to maybe a full school year of work. Summers, a lot of people are traveling. You can get great input. I don't think that the input that you want with people traveling, and there are a lot of conflicts in the summer. So really taking, you know, once we get the survey, we could start talking about it, maybe start work on the groups with some of that 4.1 million. It is permitted and it's essential. And I think many people in the community have expressed concern about, when we talked about using that money before, that, you know, we should, you know, consider using it for the roof first and foremost. So then we could start talking about the building condition survey, the process, work through the priorities, what are the priorities facilities wise that we need to address, but also our hopes and dreams, and really putting that together into our next project. What does that look like? And then maybe even kind of framing up like, you know, the next one. All right, we want to do these things. We'll talk about these first. These are our priorities. And then, you know, we've already got our eye on some things for the next one in 5 years. So the community can see that we're not only investing in maintaining our facilities, but we're also looking at programming and, you know, having really state-of-the-art facilities. I think we can have state-of-the-art facilities inside while maintaining the historic integrity of our building. But that process to do it right, you know, we heard last time that it was too fast, right? So in order to do that, but if you wait for a year, go through the process, then you work on the plan, there's like a specific timeline, you work on the plans, you gotta get your SED approvals. We're talking maybe 3 years out, 3-4 years.
An example of roofing. This isn't a next summer roofing job. Just in the smaller version of this, this is a 26 summer roofing job.
Right, and if we don't.
Because it takes us a while to get up on the roof and do field work, do the design, then it sits at SED until they get up their hopper to the number that they are on this project. So it takes time. It's not a quick turnaround. So
So
That's
we
where-
waited for that process of, you know, taking next year, working through, because you don't want to go into a project and not really get some of the essentials. And I think you want to have added value things in there. And to do that right, you know, you're probably talking at least 3 years. Like that's on a fast schedule, probably to break ground.
Probably, for you,
Right.
you won't get next year, obviously, but you might be able to get the following summer and get it done.
Well, you're talking about the roofs.
Yeah.
I'm talking about if we went,
Another
our
half we do.
the whole thing, you're
Yes.
talking about 3
Then you're
years
gonna
out.
wait a little bit longer.
What do you say, Nick?
Because one of the things about,
I don't-
the pricing is that you might be able to get 2 crews to work on your building. So to me,
Get it done.
then you might get it done.
For the
If not,
roof.
it could turn into a 2 summer
Right.
project.
So we're talking about if we don't use this remaining money that we're eligible to borrow, like we're within the timeline of doing that to do these areas, it's gonna be about 3 years out.
Yeah.
Because you really gotta really have a thoughtful process for all the other stuff that's gonna go with it on a project that you're going to vote for. I mean, we could just go out and vote on the roofs, but then I really feel like, you're gonna have to.
You lose years.
You do, and the other thing is that I really feel like when you're going asking 8 million, you wanna, you know, try to get some other things in there. And, you know, that's just my thought. I mean, certainly it's the board's, you know, the board could consider other options. But, you know, these roofs are problematic and, a little more so than we thought. So we at least have to hit some of these critical areas. We may not be able to get it to it all. And then, you know, the danger is, and like, correct me if I'm interpreting this wrong, but like, say you do one portion of a roof, like already we're not hitting all the roofs. So then we don't want to create more damage with really bad roofs, because they could start seeping into these other areas, correct?
The danger is when you start only doing select areas of roofing, and even if you like install and like a new expansion joint, because you could not do all the roofs, you still run the potential that the leaking roof comes underneath our brand new roof and starts leaking in the building because of, you know, an older roof, you know, that's, 6 feet over.
It's not gonna be a perfect scenario, but it will address a lot of this. I think waiting 3 years, I'm especially concerned about that 13 area that is Paul's, I would say, your biggest concern.
That in the gym, yeah.
The gym, but I'm concerned about the cafeteria. I mean, that wasn't as much on our radar, but that doesn't seem great. We have all of our kids in there all the time. We don't have any place else for our kids to eat. If we start getting leaking and some big rain events, having problems in there, it's gonna be really difficult for us to go about our education business as usual to wait 3 or 4 years to address that. So that's why I'm recommending that we look at this now, because we do have an opportunity. We have $4.1 million available to borrow. And it would be,
Is there harm in voting on it in December and just allowing public comment to happen and then moving forward? I'm for it. I'm gonna approve it, for my vote. But is there harm in waiting 30 days, do you think? Just to make sure we turn through the information and fully grasp it all?
well, you don't have to necessarily vote on it tonight, but again, it's time, because you want to get to, and this is roofs, this is essential, and that will start to turn into safety issues as well.
The biggest concern I have looking at this is water's not our friend. You know, this is not gonna stay there. It's gonna spread. And it's gonna get worse. And if 13, we're already talking about people fearing walking on that, what happens if we have a heavy snow and ice year? Or 3 heavy snow and ice years and we're waiting? We'll have to close that section of the building down because there won't be a roof there. So I
Is
mean,
there also a chance though that, so the parts on this one that are gray right now, that didn't show up moisture on the roof scan, is there a chance that after the winter or after this year, they'll be
They could get larger,
also-
yes.
well, no, that when
There
we
isn't
didn't
a lot of
see
ones that
these,
show up.
Well,
where we didn't see these leaking areas or these wet areas, are we gonna start to see them in these other areas? That-
yes.
Yeah, well, obviously, the older the roof becomes, the less that it's going to hold water.
but if we have $4 million, $4.1 million.
And it's already been voted.
It's already been voter approved, and roofing is part of that. If we know we have these problem areas, we should address them.
Here's the other thing. I'm sure there's some people out there that might have this question. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if there was this. My question was, because these are beyond their useful life, pretty much already, right? At or beyond their useful life. Why were they not addressed in that, $20 million? I mean, really, they probably, some of these areas, there was not a decision that was made. It's not up to the architects. In that last survey, there was not a decision made in their near and life of roofs to do a scan. And so really, these should have been already done and used that $4 million. These should have been on there as alternates.
Yeah.
And that $4 million would have been used immediately when we were coming in under budget to say, all right, these are alternate items. They should have been on there. That was not, this board, myself, we were not here. I don't know why that wasn't done, and it's hindsight's 2020. But in reality, this really should have been on there as alternates. There were no alternates listed. Again, hindsight's 2020. We can only move forward and say we should always have alternates on a project as much as we can, so that we can make good use of, the money and the debt schedule and all of those things. So, I'm concerned about safety in some of these areas. That's why I brought it. I had no idea, really when I kind of came on and we were finishing up until we started getting into this building condition survey. Obviously, Paul, we knew we were having some leaks, but I had no idea the extent of what it's become. And my recommendation is not to wait for another full project.
What I can share with you is that we did address some of the roofing in that capital project. If you look over the top of the slate, you'll notice there were the 2020.
At the very top of slate is
So we did some of those areas that because they were critical at the time. And obviously 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of these areas were not leaking like they are.
Leaking, so there wasn't a scan, and so we didn't really know, but now we have this information and.
Our estimate back then, we were right on the edge of your $20 million, and we fortunately got some good numbers, ran the project well, so we're sitting on this little nest egg that, yeah, we should probably proceed and move forward with these roofs for all the reasons you just said. If we waited for another capital project, couldn't vote on a capital project in December. We're not-
We can't even put that together.
Right.
We need to consider the building condition survey, we need
Way
to
down.
condition, we need to have community input on a larger project. I believe that goes beyond roofs. I also just, the question, is there potential over time, because it's a flat roof, like say the cafeteria? And now, I mean, I'm concerned about all areas, we occupy all areas, but I guess do safe, like are there safety implications because they're flat? If you get a lot of snow, it's heavy,
The only
it's, as they
safety
get
areas
increasingly
that I'm
wet.
concerned about is gypsum deck. Metal deck will start to rust, and it's kind of, think of it like your car, right? Some of us drive around cars that have rust on it. Is it a safety thing? Probably not,
Okay.
unless it's really bad.
We put flat roofs on
And-
schools every day.
So it's not.
No, I
I'm
know,
not-
but I
that's
just
not
saying,
worried
like,
about
we don't have to worry about
That's
safety
and
per
that's a metal
se, but.
deck roof because of the age of the building.
Cafeteria.
It's the older, yes, the older areas are more concerned. We can certainly offer to have a structural engineer come in and do an evaluation of some of these, more wet areas to help, calm any fears that the community may have.
Some of the issue may be that there's not an accessible ceiling. Like right out here in these corridors, this is a hard ceiling with glued on tiles. So there's not always a spot where you can just pop a ceiling tile like in acoustical ceilings. This is the type of ceiling you have in the corridor out there. You can't pop a tile here to get your head up above.
I'm not saying that there's, I just was thinking, if you wait 3 or 4 years, are there risks beyond just having bigger problems and more leaks? I mean, obviously there's safety issues when your cafeteria is leaking and kids are, there's
The
wet
wet floor,
floors and those types of things, but I just wanted to, just be aware of all
Well, the
the
more leaking that's
considerations.
happening,
Yeah.
the more damage that's being done to the
More
building,
damage.
aside from the roof,
Right.
inside now.
Right.
Let's keep a roof over our
That's
heads.
more money
Right,
eventually.
and again, so we are seeing some tiles dropping in some of the areas, not significantly, but the moisture is affecting the interior. of it.
So the other thing that we gotta keep in mind is that we're pricing your roofing work, okay? So like if you go in the cafeteria, you'll notice there's some damage to the ceilings already. I don't have any money there to start walking around and replacing all these things and repainting a room. So you gotta understand, to me, that's the building condition survey.
Right.
It's a hot item right there to get just.
Or we could, depending on what it is, use like 100,000 capital,
Well,
we could
maybe,
use
and
capital layout
you could
or
certainly do
something.
that as you're right,
To like in some,
to take care of those kinds of issues, correct? But,
like, see.
but I don't want to mislead you. So some areas where we may have to put in a new roof drains and new drain systems because of the way the insulation system might go, we're gonna take ceilings out and replace that. So we have some of that covered, but I can't tell you I'm taking out all your ceilings.
Or like replacing all of it where it might be, yeah,
Exactly.
we're not making it all. the
And the
entire
other thing is, 'cause I need to
cafeteria
come up-
ceiling look.
We need to have a conversation about whether or not, what we put back for a ceiling. Because we had an in-depth conversation when we did the hallway basically in the front of the building. Our work was not to touch the barrel vault outside the old main office because it was don't touch.
Mhm.
So then we made sure that whatever we did, we actually had to run our wiring around that particular area. And that's what we want to make sure that we
Okay.
consistently do.
Okay.
Okay.
So, ideally, how much time do we have, would you say, to stay on schedule for not this summer, summer 26? How much time?
I would say that you should at least be able to let us go sometime by the end of January. So if you want to talk about this, this is not I need an answer tonight, and it's not an answer I need next week.
Right.
However, I need to get work done, which means I want to do it in the springtime, and then we're going to design it and get it to SED hopefully by, let's say, June. And then SED is going to take their sweet time to try to approve it. So to me, having approval that following fall, perfect time to bid a job and getting ready for the next year.
And, this falls under, we would add an addendum to our previous agreement with you.
Oh, yeah.
Schoolhouse.
That's
So
fine.
it kind of falls under the same project, right? And
I
we
can't
just
speak for
add
those
an
guys, but our
But
fees
for
are
you
Canadian.
guys, all right, so I gotta talk to.
That's right, you
No,
gotta.
not me.
you. Eric.
Give Eric a call.
But, you know, it's not like a complete start from scratch, like when you're doing a new project.
Right.
And the Todd's number has an incidental number which covers us,
Mhm.
and that number looks like it more than adequate to
Okay.
squeeze us in there.
All right, so if, for example, we take some questions tonight, then as we're thinking about it if necessary, you might be able to come back next meeting, answer any questions. Callie, you're there.
She'll have all the answers for you.
It's gonna be the Callie and Todd. thing.
I could video in if you'd like.
I'll be in Florida.
I'll be sitting
We
out.
know where to find you.
Yeah.
We can do it. And then, either by January board meeting, we should have a idea of our direction. If not before, we may feel good about a direction at the December meeting. So questions, what questions?
My only question, I think I understand, but if we told you tonight, or if we tell you in January, you're looking at taking course in the spring anyway, as the
Correct.
next step, so it's
That's
not
why
gonna
it's
change the
not-
project
that's
going
why-
forward. I don't wanna take every minute now and then squeeze things
I'd
at the
say
end when we're gonna
have a
have other
conversation
decisions to make,
amongst
that's the only
yourself,
thing, so.
Because obviously we want you comfortable
So-
moving forward.
So,
But, so yeah, you
I-
have
I
time.
appreciate
The
it.
only issue is that you're gonna deal with leaks, but you're dealing with them now.
you're gonna have to anyway.
And taking scores in the spring helps narrow down, do we need to make a decision to pull something back because we may go over? So, right,
It helps
correct?
with the design, because he's gotta make the insulation thicker, so he's gotta figure out how to do that.
Okay,
And whether he's adding roof drains, whether we're raising rooftop units on curbs,
okay,
all that has to be figured out.
okay.
So the nice thing about it is that we priced in raising the rooftop units.
Right.
Okay.
So everything that we knew,
You kind of went the maximum
We have-
side.
we have in our price, right?
Okay. All right, any initial questions, initial thoughts that you have? I mean, I feel like we would be leaning more to this partial solution right now.
Yeah, I think we need to.
I mean, we
Yeah.
can't fit in the other 1987 roof on the same price, but that's all I want.
Well,
This one
so,
here.
so let me
Can we get this one
let me
here?
tell you, see, I don't, obviously I'd like to make sure that I'm not overcommitting, okay?
Right.
So if we don't have to put as much insulation on the roof, or we don't, have to, we can get a good taper system and not put a lot of extra insulation on, we can actually add more roof areas, okay? So, we're gonna spend that $4 million number, right? So the goal is, whether I design what you see there, or I design another
Mhm.
5,000 square feet, the number's really good.
Right, so once we
My
get
number's not changing,
closer,
so it's
we'll-
like, let's just get it done. Right.
just like when you thought in the beginning, right, and you pulled back on some things, you thought we're maxing out the 20 million. Yes, 21.3, and then we came in well under because you did an amazing job of,
Thank you.
making it, I mean, really, that's
Just
the
watch the
case.
contractors.
I mean, it's really the
That's all
case
our-
of, even during COVID and all of the, price increases and the delays, there was a really good handle on the, cost situation, really trying to keep the costs in line. And so, I think they kind of go the not worst case scenario, but the maximum, this is the maximum of what we think we can do, but there's always contingency built in, and if there's less contingency needed, we'll be able to maybe address some additional spots, and we'll be having some conversations, and they'll have recommendations, really primarily with Paul and these guys as to where really the next best place to go is,
So just to make you aware that there are two roofs that are not included in this smaller scaled down version that did come up with some wet areas of insulation. So understand that this isn't 100% of your wet insulation. This is 100% of the worst stuff from what we've talked with your facilities director about. The other two areas are not anything that they've noticed anything at this point, so keep that in mind. But that notice of something could happen at any time too. It's just like a roof at your house. It could happen at any point. You don't want to expect it. So.
are there, I guess, see if there are any other questions. Yeah, yeah. And then, my suggestion would be to send them to me so that they could, we could kind of see, are there things that we can just present the answers and have a discussion about, or do we need them to come back in December? And then, we'll put this on as a discussion topic for December. We may have an answer for you
Yeah.
in December.
Sounds prudent.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your retirement.
Todd, don't forget to release Gina.
You're
You wanna go
welcome.
get your little thing. So Todd doesn't walk away with it. All right, so last call, no questions, correct? Okay, so,
Very happy you did understand.
me too. I mean, it was good timing with the survey and we could have it attainable because it's part of the survey. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So quickly, I don't have a lot on my report, but I have, Kim Carr here as part of my report, and I just thought, I will be sharing a bit for tomorrow, as part of our report that we're doing in our community planning and our work and our blueprint preview. But I did want, Mrs. Carr to come and just talk about, especially the have a kindness coalition that she's been leading and, come up to where, do you want to plug in?
I would like to.
Sure. Oh, sure.
You need the.
Yep.
Fine.
Okay.
Can you? Yeah. That's good.
Yes.
Do you want the little clicker? Yep. Is it back in there? Yep, I said it.
I got louder.
Yeah, so
For later.
if you need to, feel free to get up. Here's this, it should work. Or if you want to do a USB on here. Oh, she does not. This is a Chromebook,
No, it's no.
Mac. So no, yeah, I don't have the USB for the clicker. I didn't bring it. I have one, but.
Is it okay if I talk from here?
Sure, you can just kind of back and forth. You can roll this right around if you want. Here. Oops, do this.
I think we all.
Well, there we go. It's back.
Anyway, thank you for having me. I appreciate being able to talk to the Board of Education. What the Kindness Coalition is just a group of volunteers from the school who already have managed different programs to help our students. And all these programs are run completely by donations, and these volunteers fundraise, and they volunteer their time outside of school to bring these programs to our students, and they're very valuable. So one of the things that I started was the Kindness Food Pantry, and it's just a closet in my office, but it's available to any students, any families who are in need. So far, I've used it for families who come to me and who needed help, particularly families who are in temporary housing. And the money to buy the food was provided by grants or by donations from the Fort Miller Group and Stewart's. And so far, we've had a small number of families, but I'd like to promote this also so students would know that they can come and they can use this food pantry, but I want to do it the right way. I want to survey students to find out how we can do this in a way that won't promote any stigmatism and that people can feel very comfortable. So that's a picture. It's small, but has been helpful. And it is no way intended to be any replacement for the food pantry across the street. Sure, for the kids, you want better? I don't know. The Cool to Be Kind Club just brought a bunch of food over to the Salem Food Pantry, and the Salem Food Pantry is serving 102 families the groceries that they need for their Thanksgiving meal. So we're just very glad to have them across the street.
That's up from 80.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Also, I have a snack closet, and that's for teachers. They can get snacks for any students who don't have them in the room, who forgot them, or just their families can't afford to bring a snack. And that'll be replenished, and teachers are welcome to use that. Also, this is a picture of students. Oh, can you see it? Check the there. This is a picture of some high school students who helped unload food from the food pantry for the backpack program. The food pantry is working with us to transport the food for the backpack program. We purchase it now from the regional food bank, and that's allowed us to get some free items and some fresh items that we couldn't get in the past. And they go to Latham and pick up the food and bring it to the food pantry or to our parking lot. And then we just have to bring it upstairs and it gets put into backpacks. So we're
So
really.
can you talk about the backpack program just quickly,
Sure.
that it's, what it's for?
So the backpack program is for families who need some extra help over the weekend. Students get a backpack filled with food and they bring it home on a Friday. They bring their empty backpack back on Monday. We pick it up and we do the whole thing again. And this is all done through donations. And
About how many families are we serving right now, do you?
right now, there's 37, we do 37 backpacks, but there's way more students. I think it might be, it's in the high 50s, maybe 57 students.
So 10%.
It's a really important program for our kids. And we have, incorporated some fresh fruit that we didn't have before. In fact, this Friday, there was some free ground beef that we got through the regional food bank. So that's going back as part of our meal for students.
I think our cable is, we have to jiggle the cable again. It's got a red thing, I think we need a new one.
Another program, volunteer program and donation program we have at Salem is the Operation Santa Claus, where it's phenomenal, all the gifts that the children get. This year, we have 77 students enrolled in the program. Some of those, I think it's 77 children. Some of the children are not students, they're younger siblings because they help the whole family. And last night, Mrs. Ruggles, who oversees the program, shopped with student volunteers. And it just makes a wonderful Christmas for our families that are less fortunate in Salem.
And we have some pictures coming soon. They shared them. So I haven't seen them yet, but they're going to share them with me and we'll get them out
Yes,
there.
I didn't have time to get those from
Yeah.
Amy, but I did get the numbers. So anyway, that's it. I just wanted to explain some of the wonderful things that we have for our students and how we're supporting them at school.
Thank you. Go ahead.
How are your relationships in the community?
I'm forging relationships in the community. I went to the Rotary Club this month. I went to the Historic Salem Courthouse annual meeting that they had and got to meet the new directors, presidents of the Historic Salem Courthouse. And I'm working to develop more and more relationships.
PTA, you've been working with
PTA was at the
PTA. You kind of going to start working with the shop, correct? Like, at some point to coordinate clothing donations.
Yeah.
They've offered that, so that's on the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's coming along. Do you want to talk about, so quickly, just dental clinic? Well, this is very exciting that for the past 2 years, we've done them in like May, June, and towards the end of the year. Kim has worked hard to add a second dental clinic in, so we're gonna have one coming up.
Yep, so students now can get their teeth cleaned twice a year, which is really exciting. And I'm always looking to add more things.
We had a vision clinic at the end of the year, but it was only for the youngest students, so I've been working to find something that will work for more students. I'd like to see something that any age student could have an eye exam.
Have you presented with the Hudson Networkers?
There, we work with them on the dental and
They don't have a vision. I reached out. They don't have anything for vision yet. But, things are always developing.
and we work with them a lot, like to dream things up and Sue Clary, and we try to coordinate on, what we're both dreaming about, who's gonna work on what, and try to bring it to the community. But the dental clinic is very exciting. Do we know our numbers yet? I know they just came to present recently, and then it'll be sign-ups.
Yeah, they haven't, all the consent forms haven't been returned yet, so
So,
we'll know in December.
okay, yeah, so they come and they present to the kids. They bring home permission slips, but last year in the spring, we had 80s.
Yeah.
Which was up from the previous year. So thank you for sharing with us. We'll have Kim stop by periodically to give you some updates. She has way more things on her list. I actually asked her, she's usually so busy working on all of these projects. I asked her to start creating a brag sheet for what she and her coalition. She's got student ambassadors. She has a lot of things going on that, people that work with her. So maybe just putting like a quarterly sheet together, just so that we really can see all of the, she can probably stand up here for an hour and talk about all the things she's doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim.
Any other questions for Kim?
10% for backpacks.
And that's what we know about. So traditionally, older kids tend to reach out and for help. They're less often, just because of their age, and they're a little more mindful of what that may or may not mean and what that might look like. And so Kim has her ways of learning these things, but we're on it. We work with Wendy Carey, and we can look at families who get other services from the county or the state and get them on our radar in some different ways. So, but it's great to have Kim here because it just really maximizes what we can accomplish. So quickly, just wanted to, I think, that everybody's noticed that we have our student board member here, Mason Hayward. And I'll let you tell a little bit about yourself, and then when the board shares board news, then Mason will have a report, I think, a little bit, but just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Mason Hayward. I am a senior this year, and I'm not really sure what else to say.
So what are some things that you're involved here at school, and do you have any plans for the future yet? Like, what are you thinking about?
Well, this year I am involved in the drama club production of Groundhog's Day. I'm also the treasurer of the Salem Film Club, and I participated in math team last few weeks ago. Just wherever I can. Plans right now, I'm looking at colleges. One of the main ones I'm looking at Siena for anything in information technology.
Oh, excellent. Great. And I believe, so we did have a lot of people, I'm sure, heard from their kids. We had Sweetheart and Heroes in the house, last week, Thursday and Friday. We have been working with them, so they came to present, but they also, a team of our teachers, some of them, and faculty and staff, some of them are here, tonight in this room, wearing multiple hats. We've started a pilot team on community building circles and really bringing that in. And so Sweetheart and Heroes were, they trained our team. They came in, they worked on some circles. So I know Mason is going to talk about that. So I don't want to steal his thunder. And I'll maybe add a little more to that, but I didn't want to be remiss. I did want to mention it. Quickly, I just want to welcome Katie Jones, our director of PPS. So wave if people don't know it. She's finally here. We're so excited getting to know our families and students and being part of our team. So we're really excited about that. We do have some vacancies that we're working on filling. So we do have some vacancies for aides, some part-time, full-time postings. We've had some new students enter the district that have required some aides in programming, tutoring. So we're sorting through that now that Katie's on day 3. We're starting to sort through that and what that's going to look like for the future.
It's taking so long.
So you will hear a little bit about more of what that might mean to our hiring situation over the next few weeks and certainly next meeting. We are reposting for the elementary school counselor. Mrs. Erin Natal, our social worker, is returning from her maternity leave. I know she was in visiting with her little cutie, so we're excited to have her coming back after the Thanksgiving holiday. We do have Bev Kretzer and Lisa Town, who are both working. Bev's working 3 days a week. Lisa's working 2 days a week. They have agreed until we find an elementary counselor, they're going to kind of put together and fill that. But I think everybody's done an amazing job. The building principals, Kristen Eastman, Jocelyn Nolan, and Lisa and Bev, just kind of we're down one full-time counselor, and we've been making it work the best we can. So we're super excited to have Erin come back, but we are going to repost for the elementary counselor and see what's out there. But Bev and Lisa, I think they're enjoying themselves and they're willing to stay until we can find somebody. So we're in good hands in the short term. And I just wanted to say real quickly, NHS was amazing. I forgot to write down how many students we inducted today. I think, was it 12? Seven, and we had 12 other members last year. So really exciting day. And Mason is in the National Honor Society also. You're going to be just shouting out all your credentials there. And also, it's just always such a beautiful ceremony. The tradition of that is so amazing. And it's possible because we have a smaller environment, but I love it. It was great. And also we had a performance by our seniors. And Mason was in that group, and it was phenomenal. So just really a great day, really good, feel good day today, and then also having a performance here. So just wanted to give them a shout out and celebrate that, and welcome our new National Honor Society members. Any other? I hope I didn't forget anything, but I'm also trying to be mindful of time. Oh, we do have our community planning tomorrow for a blueprint refresh. I know I see some familiar faces in here who signed up, and thank you very much. I know it is a busy time of the year, but we did have the opportunity to be able to have it and get it done. And I just think, having that fresh look and tweaking things is important. We did also reach out to all of the people who were on the first planning committee, the community planning 4-hour session. If they had not signed up, we did reach out to them again and just thank them for participating last time, just inviting them, making sure they knew that we would love to have them back. But we do have a nice mix, a little smaller group, but close to 24. Okay. So we have a 24, so it's a nice group, and we're looking forward to that.
4 o'clock tomorrow, correct?
4 o'clock tomorrow in the cafeteria. And thank you to the wrestling team, and athletics and drama. They all work some things around to make it work because there's usually wrestling in there. So we made it work. Thank you. And thank you, Mrs. Eastman, for putting it all together.
Thank you. All right. We are moving on to opportunities for the public to be heard, our public comment session. And although state law does not require us to hold a public comment period, we have chosen to do so because we believe it is very important for us to hear comments, concerns, and questions from our community. As outlined in our policy, the public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Please do not expect the board to respond to your comments or questions tonight. We will, however, respond to your questions at a future meeting if necessary, or have the proper staff member get back to you at an appropriate time.
Anyone wishing to make a comment to the board, please come to the podium, state your name and where you're from. Please address your comments to the presiding officer. Any group or organization wishing to address the board may come up to the podium, but please identify a single spokesperson for comments. Each individual speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. The individual time limits will be enforced so that as many members of the public who wish to speak may be allowed to do so. Speakers may comment on any agenda item or any matter related to district business. The board will not permit in public session any discussion involving individual district personnel or students. Anyone wishing to discuss matters involving or directly related to individual district personnel or students should present their concerns and comments to the superintendent during regular business hours. Anyone who has a longer presentation or wishes to spend more time in conversation, please contact the district clerk to schedule a meeting. We want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we ask that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. Thank you for your cooperation. So if there's anybody who has a comment or concern?
Mike Nugents, today 649 Tip Lady Road, tomorrow 139 South Main.
Congratulations.
Yes, we've waited a long time. Language is very important. And I want to touch on 2 words tonight and tie them together. Investment and teaching. And I'll start with investment. Every dollar in the budget for Salem Central School should be considered an investment, strategic spending, not an expenditure anyone can spend. But I've long voiced support for everything must be an investment, or else it shouldn't be in the budget. Teaching is another important term. We have different bargaining units, different titles in every school, but everyone teaches. This past weekend, when I attended the craft fair and was able to buy some Christmas presents, some beautiful pieces that Karen made, not only did that event support a group supportive of the school, but it brought in a lot of people who otherwise would not be in the school. And that foot traffic is very important. And what they saw, and I hope everyone saw, was a beautiful building, outside and inside, and how well maintained it is. Because the building and facilities crew teaches responsibility, teaches safety, as was discussed earlier this evening with the roofing project. The people who serve meals are incredibly important because hungry kids can't learn. The secretaries are teaching conflict resolution. They're addressing juggling emails and phone calls and people like me coming in looking for my grandson's glasses every couple of months. Every person teaches, regardless of whether they have that title. The bus drivers teach safety. The secretaries, tolerance, understanding, conflict resolution. Your teacher aides are often know more about the individuals that they work with than anyone else in the building. They're critical. Every group teaches. And that was driven home when I attended that craft fair, how beautiful the building was. Now, imagine that craft fair if it rained like we're expecting the next few days. Imagine that craft fair if we had buckets collecting dripping water. We have a fiduciary responsibility to exercise and invest taxpayers' money. In my opinion, the roofing needs to be addressed. The cost that's associated with that wasn't discussed tonight is the potential litigation and liability if someone slips during a physical education class and injures themselves when water leaked, when we're aware of leaks in the building. So please factor that in. I encourage you to invest in protecting, preserving this beautiful building, protecting the safety of those within it. So teaching and investments, two important things. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Danny Felino, I'm coming in as a teacher tonight. I just wanted to take a second and thank the board for the opportunity to have the circus training. I attended it this summer. I think I spoke about it in August or September. The training this summer was excellent. To see it happening with the kids this past week was awesome. I had a group of seniors on Friday that I did a circle with. Was a little anxious, I guess, as to how some of them would interpret it based on what they had heard or based on what they thought it might be. And actually had several of them walk up to Mr. Moore and say it was an amazing experience. So it was exactly what we needed and we need more of. So thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? We will have an additional comment period at the end of our business, if anybody would like to ask anything then. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, does anyone wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? John?
I'm gonna ask you to remove the surplus report.
Surplus report? All right, entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the surplus report. That would be the minutes from October 16th and October 23rd. The treasurer's report, condition of accounts, the internal claims audit report, and the CSEN 504 report.
So move.
Motion by Peter,
Second.
second by John. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. And we have a discussion.
Yeah, I don't want to not accept it. I just want to have a question about it. For those of you who haven't looked, it's a list of a bunch of computer equipment we're getting rid of, several pages. And I just would like to make sure, because it doesn't say how we're going to dispose of it and where it's going. And we obviously have families in our communities with all kinds of needs that we're either exploring how we're going to get the most dollars back for the school in that distribution, or if not, if we're going to have the greatest impact in our community that we can possibly have with that stuff. Because it obviously cost us a lot more.
So thank you, for asking that, and I'm just looking at this and, we do have a form that should accompany this or the additional information. So as you notice, we have a form. Sometimes when there's a lot, so we, have tech support from BOCES that we serve, that we have the service, that we purchase from them. So when he has a lot, he prints out what he's surplusing. So a lot of these are, either not operable or they're, really their life expectancy has declined. Now, the majority of this, I don't know if necessarily every item, because there's some controllers in there, but a lot of all of our Chromebooks, laptops have been leased. And so we have the opportunity to purchase them after, but because they're obsolete, we've been replacing them. And so we return them to BOCES and not purchase them. So we just, this equipment pretty much is all leased at this point and goes back to them unless we want to purchase it.
I said, yeah.
And there have been some cases, I believe, in the past where we have done some of that, or Mr. DeSoto has taken things for parts. But I know when I was first here, as the high school principal, I do remember very early on, but I don't necessarily know if we were leasing everything at that. That wasn't my purview at the time. I was the high school principal. but I do know that there was an occasion where, Mr. DeSoto did arrange for one or two items to go to students. So that has happened in the past, or if there was a need, that is something that there has been consideration of. If BOCES was going to just dispose those items, a lot of times they use them for parts. Whether it's for here or other places, to repair screens, those types of things. But, we should, and we'll make sure that we have the form attached, so you know, is it being disposed, returned, leased and returned? So that will be more clear to the board, so I apologize.
No, I just want to make sure we were aware, so.
And some things, that are surplus that are not electronics or really the technology. The problem is technology is gets obsolete so quickly these days, but a lot of times, and Mr. Yakbeck left, but things in our facilities, assets that we may have, if we are able to, we could auction those. We could sell them through international auction. Auctions international, I said it backwards. Or what was I didn't bring my notes.
We do sealed bids.
Oh,
like on
sealed
our,
bids.
equipment, like transportation.
Mhm.
We did a lot, even in the building project with, like the bleachers, sealed bleachers, that's through auctions international, but that was all on a form. I was surprised it was not there. But-
Right,
So you're aware of,
we will make sure that is clear every time. so.
and if it's a sealed bid, the board accepts that sealed bid.
Yep.
So you're aware of the amount it's sold for.
Any other questions about that?
That's all I had. Should we move to accept the surplus report then? Is that the next step?
Need a motion to accept the surplus report as presented?
So,
Second.
By Jan, second by Peter. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5. Thank you. Moving on to committee reports. Finance, you mentioned that's going to be
Monday.
coming up on Monday. And then the policy committee, we have several
met.
policies.
We met, we're gonna tie up about 20 minutes of your time later on.
We'll say that we won't make you any repetition here. And, John, we had an ad hoc. meeting.
Yeah, I will happily do a brief summary for everybody.
Sure.
We went over participation numbers from the fall, which pretty healthy. I don't actually have the paper with everything in front of me, but it's 25-ish, both boys and girls, a few total numbers across sports that we had participating from Salem. And kind of what were at that point preliminary numbers for the winter, which are already outdated. I can tell you the girls wrestling number we had last week was 5, and on Monday they had 17. So,
And 12, and today we have 19.
so the numbers are lower than the actual numbers. I think the one thing going on in the winter, people maybe want to be aware of, we did approve a boys basketball merger. Well, I actually didn't, the rest of you did. But in the spring, that merger is varsity only. So we do have our own JV and modified boys basketball. We're really short on juniors and seniors. We've got 2 seniors and no juniors, and I suspect those numbers haven't changed from last week who were interested in basketball. We had those 2 seniors and 3 juniors, I think, go down to Cambridge to try out for what will be a merged varsity team.
And I think 1 sophomore possibly.
Or, I'm sorry, 2 seniors and 3 sophomores that went down.
Sophomores?
That's what it was. I spoke wrong, I'm sorry. 2 seniors and 3 sophomores that went down to try out for the varsity team. We'll either make that team or we'll be able to come back here and join the JV team if they don't. Thank you to Cambridge for helping us out, because we would not have had enough kids who could really compete on a varsity level, which then puts JV kids trying to play where they really aren't ready. And hopefully, if we do this for a year or 2, because our numbers are much better, 10th grade down, we're back to where we can support our own basketball team. So that's the path that is on, which I know some people are concerned that all these mergers are forever, and they don't have to be. Sometimes they make sense to be, and sometimes they don't. Thank you for helping us out on that one. And then the other you'll also see on the agenda later, we talked about spring, and proposal that track will be merged, is the proposal, at least, and we'll talk more about that when it comes. So that's,
Okay. Then moving on to the personnel issues, entertain a motion to accept the following resignation. Tanya Bounds, teacher aide, effective October 24th, 2024.
So moved.
Motion by Peter,
Second.
second by Tom. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the following retirement payout for Stephen Dalton in the amount of $17,131.25.
so moved.
Motion by John,
Second.
second by Peter. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Now we have a list of appointments. Did anybody wish to remove an appointment from the list that I need to combine? Entertain a motion to approve the following appointments. John Gunther as tutor for the 24-25 school year at the approved rate at $50 an hour for up to 2 students. Tina Fleming as a tutor for the 2024-2025 school year at an approved rate of $50 per hour for up to 2 students. Mark Eastman as the modified boys basketball coach for the 24-25 school year. Charles Oswald as a volunteer boys basketball coach at all levels for the 24-25 school year. Robert Siglowski as a volunteer boys basketball coach, all levels for the 24-25 school year. And Blake Rich as the JV girls basketball coach for the 24-25 school year.
So moved.
Motion by Peter,
Second.
second by John. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried. And I apologize, I should have asked Mrs. Eastman if we had an amendment to our agenda, but it was just so exciting all of our. We do have 2 additions. One of them is in personnel. So I'd like to move to the agenda to complete the personnel. Entertain a motion to approve the following long-term substitute appointments at a rate of $220 per day. Jane Laurie to cover Mary, to approve the leave of absence from November 25th, 2024 to honor about February 28th, 2025. And Stacy Parker to cover leave of absence effective December 6th. They had to change that date today. 2024 to honor about January 21st, 2025.
So moved.
Motion by John,
Second.
second by Peter. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. And we can move on to our action items. We do have some combined items for building use. Is there anybody who wishes to remove one? Entertain a motion to approve the following building use requests. Salem Youth Rest for Thursday or Friday from 5:30 to 7, December, January, and February. The Salem PTA for the use of the cafeteria on November 12th, 2024 from 1 to 7 for a fundraiser delivery and pickup. And the Salem PTA for the auditorium on November 21st and 2nd, 12 to noon for a PTA movie afternoon for elementary students.
So
Second. Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to adopt the 2025-2026 school budget development calendar.
So moved.
Motion by John,
Second.
second by.
Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Any discussion? We have.
It's lengthy. I'm ready
Yeah,
for it.
well, it covers, something. So, anybody have any questions or concerns about the framework for that calendar?
No, I don't think so.
All those in favor of adopting it, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0.
Fun begin.
All right. Looking back at my notes from our last meeting, we did have, some questions about one of the first reads. And I think that was policy 5713. So I would like to handle that one separately. Because I think we had some questions we wanted to answer. Entertain a motion to approve the second reading of medication and personal care items.
So moved.
Motion by Peter.
Second.
Second by Jen. Discussion?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
This is the same thing I tried to express last month and maybe it wasn't clear. So, gonna try again and try to be clearer. And I know this wasn't why we started looking at this policy, first of all. This policy exists and we're changing some wording, but, the policy as it exists, and I tried to read it carefully and look for it, seems to me to say that students can't carry medication on them. And then we allow exceptions, but exceptions are only allowed if they have one of these 4 classes of conditions. I think that's us as a board in a place that we don't belong. Ultimately, whether it's a respiratory condition or a skin condition or a heart condition or whatever, what does that matter to us as a board? That's really between a student and their medical provider. And why are we going to treat them differently if it's a heart condition instead of a respiratory condition? And so maybe I'm missing something in the language.
Maybe I can clear this up. I spoke with Mr. Bremer about this today, and looked at it again as well. One of the reasons that the conditions that are listed are in fact listed, is for safety of the student. If you've got a kid who has asthma, who's out at the baseball field and has an attack, he needs to have that respirator with him. He asked it. You have a type 1 diabetic, well, we can't have them take their insulin injector out of them when they come to school. They have to have it on them. There are some things, if you have a kid who's got a bee allergy, a bee sting allergy, and he's out on the track and gets stung by a bee, he better have his EpiPen. And Mrs. Bramer can only be so many places at once. So some of these kids, if it's a life-threatening condition, by the time the EMS gets to the baseball field, it may be too late. So that's the reason those are, in fact, for those conditions are listed there, is because these can be life-threatening conditions. The reason that we don't have other conditions on there is because the medications that are involved. If you've got a kid who needs to take Adderall, I don't feel comfortable as a board saying we should allow him to carry that around the hallways with him. It's a stimulant. Simple as that.
But Peter, to that point, the self-administration subtitle, it talks about generally, and to your point, there's conditions that are outlined. When I read it, I didn't think that there was anything that was exclusionary by that, because there are specific ones that are mentioned because they do have to have specific handling of certain medications. But generally, as long as there is an emergency care plan and all the permissions that are required, that it can happen for any student. So I don't think there's an intent to exclude anybody. I read all of that into that general, it said generally. So it's right here.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got it.
Oh, you got it?
I had it on the screen.
So
Okay.
it's talking
So
about for the purpose.
For the purpose of this policy, is where medication
Includes
includes both
both prescription and
non.
non-prescription, right?
Okay.
The school, for the student to carry that, the
Right.
school must have either the original written or the written signed consent from the parent.
Right.
One of these things.
Okay,
That's aside from these
no,
specific ones.
but continue now. A student is not permitted to carry any medication on their person in school, or on the school bus, or keep any medication in their school lockers. And this is the sentence that my
With the
issue is
exceptions
with.
you're talking about. But they can still-
Exceptions may apply. Exceptions may apply for students diagnosed with asthma or other respiratory illness, diabetes, or allergies, who will be permitted to carry and self-administer medication under certain conditions.
Right.
I appreciate Peter's point that these are life-threatening conditions and that these are necessary. There are students with other life-threatening conditions that maybe don't fit under these. And maybe the medications right now aren't responsible for them to carry. But why are we making that decision as a board rather than letting medical professionals make the decision, our administration make this decision, our school boards make the decision?
Because within a fact,
So can I just add in, I think, and I reached out when I think we were not completely clear. We misunderstood a little bit when we had our last policy meeting, but when you sent your email that you still had some questions, I did reach out to the attorney. It's been very busy the past couple of days and we're not on the same schedule. So I think we consult with the attorney and see if there is a way to put language in there. However, it doesn't mean that students don't have access to their medication through the nurse, or there might not be some circumstances that might change. However, the fact of the matter is that not always are a lot of these like pills and medication properly managed. Could they take too many? Could they creams, those types of things? There are, I believe some of this is because of the consideration of some of the risks that they can pose in other ways. And of course, we certainly want to assume that everyone's handling responsibly, but if I'm carrying my Adderall or some other things, those are sold. Those are sold to other students. Someone could take too many. There are a lot of reasons why some are and some of those are controlled substances. And so I think my sense is that plays into this a bit. Then you're talking about age level too, at what age then are we allowing self-carry? So I think
But your policy is already saying for self-carry, you need a doctor to say they need this, you need a doctor or not a doctor, a medical professional, but to say that they are able to self-administer. And there's no reason we can't say in the school nurse to determine that it's appropriate for them and for the administration to determine that it's not a detriment
But
to
it
their
says,
learning.
it does say
whatever.
exceptions may apply.
But only that if you have to read the whole sentence, exceptions may apply for students diagnosed
But I
with.
think
Maybe if you
the
can
attorney.
include.
So, yeah, no,
Exceptions
I'd love to see another thing added in there
It's not that,
that allows exceptions to apply more
Right,
broadly.
but I do
Not
think,
forces them to, but allows them to.
but I think that's a lot to ask the nurse to have that responsibility of whether or not they can self-carry or not.
Let it come from the medical professional, require.
Right, but if I'm
require
permitted to
consent.
self-carry my Adderall, it doesn't mean I might not sell it.
If you're
So I
dealing
just,
with- if you're dealing with
I'm just saying we have to administratively be the person to think, there are certain medications and certain things that we just aren't going to allow to self-carry. Is there a way to build that into the language? I think we leave that up to the attorney. So these policies are initially vetted through Erie one through attorneys, but so I want to ask him, is there a way to build in your question?
I understand that.
It's
Attorneys are
not
trying to protect the school from liability, and I appreciate that, but I'm trying to protect our kids.
It's not
So
a
I-
well-written policy.
I'm not saying our kids aren't trying, no, they can.
It says exceptions may apply for students diagnosed with asthma, but exceptions shall apply here. They absolutely apply here. It's not they may or may not, they absolutely do. So that sentence just needs to be tweaked because it's not a good sentence.
But again, you're putting now liability on a principal or a nurse to make a
No.
decision.
Exceptions shall apply because the person has asthma. They shall apply because the person has diabetes.
Right, but-
They shall apply.
But what I'm hearing,
But
John,
then may apply in other circumstances. It's kind of what John is alluding to.
Right, but what
in my mind.
but what I'm hearing is you want some additional permissions in there. and I
Well, I'd
just
like to
wanna be-
understand why there aren't.
Right.
Why
I
we're
think there's a
saying.
very reason that
One
sort
of
of
the reasons,
discussed, because in schools,
It can be missing.
drugs are sold and mishandled
one of the reasons
by
that this
students. And we
applies,
don't want to think about that perhaps, but
No.
it does happen.
I'm not oblivious to that possibility.
Okay.
That's not.
And I think that's where the
Can I
protection in this sort of
can I add
lies.
what has become, I think will become the determinant here to me? But one of the reasons this applies is we are developing this as a board policy.
Right.
And if we establish this as a board policy, we are going to have to sit down with a nurse every year and go through every child's medication and decide which ones we're going to allow them to carry.
But
We are going to take that responsibility on ourselves.
I'm not necessarily sure of that. I think we should just, let me speak. to
Yeah, I think the attorney should.
I'll send that out. We
advise.
can have a discussion. We can table this, correct?
Mhm.
We can table it.
Yes.
That would be my recommendation. I will share the concerns. I actually sent him your narrative and said, could we discuss and bring that forward? I'll share them, with the policy committee with you ahead of time. We may, when we have our policy committee, but depending on his recommendations, have something, a different language to present to you or a reason as to why he
As to why we
supports
should
it.
definitely
Right.
stick with this. No, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Fine, yeah. Mhm. Then we'll postpone the second read until December.
Entertain a motion to postpone the second read of policy 7513 until a board meeting after a policy committee. We cannot.
So,
Yeah. Have that policy committee meeting in.
good language, yeah, thank you. I'll move it since I caused the problem.
I'll second. Second.
Hopefully it's an opportunity.
Second.
Did you second?
Here.
Yep.
So we have a motion to postpone it to another meeting with a policy meeting in the middle. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Is there a need to discuss the other second readings? Or are people comfortable with moving to combine those?
Yes.
Entertain a motion to approve the second readings of policy 7521, students with life-threatening health conditions, policy 7351, timeout, and policy 7352, limited authorized use of physical restraints.
So moved.
Moved by Peter,
Second.
second by John. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. We will move on to an adoption in December. We do have, moving on to the first reading of 3 additional policies. Entertain a motion to approve the following first readings. Policy 7554, equal educational opportunities. Policy 7555, education services for married/pregnant students. And policy 3310, public access to records.
These are all pretty much directly out of your
We
one.
just,
So
in
moved.
order to have a discussion.
Yeah, but sorry.
So moved.
Yeah.
Jen,
Second.
second by John. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
Oh, wait,
Or the
you-
dis-
it's
oh, I'm sorry,
discussion.
discussion.
Do you want to go ahead?
Just these, just straight from area one. It's
Okay,
a,
thank you.
it's just a minor modification is a split of 1 and a 2, and it's.
You've already received positive comments about the FOIL list. Policy.
Well, that's for, this, so
Yeah.
this is access, how the public access,
Public access.
like teacher disciplinary records.
Right,
Right.
that's an addition to it now.
And it was for like,
Yeah.
through the state, an immediate recommendation to add to your policy.
Thank you.
So these are just, customized updates on the policy. Any other conversation or notes that we should be aware of with the different policies?
With those 3, no.
With those?
No.
Anybody have any questions for the policy committee on those? So we do have a motion on the table to accept the first read of those 3 policies. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. And we have a retirement of a policy.
Yes.
Entertain a motion to approve the retirement of policy 5240, tax assessment and collection/property tax exemptions.
So moved.
Second.
Second by John.
What's this mean?
The policy deletion is recommended again by Erie one, and the reason is it's kind of an obsolete policy.
Hasn't been relied upon.
Furthermore, to make certain property tax exemptions available, a district must hold a public hearing and adopt a board resolution granting the exemption. It is not sufficient to place the tax exemption in a district policy manual. Examples of property tax exemptions that require a public hearing and the adoption of the board resolution annually include, but are not limited to. And that's almost everything that we have a tax exemption. We're not trying to take any more of your money. We're just, we can't have these exemptions without doing an annual hearing and an annual
Public.
adoption of them, public adoption. So it's the policy offset.
Any further questions for Cooper? All those in favor of retiring policy, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 5-0.
So we were productive this month.
You got this, you got this. Don't even walk through the policies. Entertain a motion to accept the following donation, $500 for the backpack program from the First Baptist Church, Glens Falls Thrift Shop.
So moved.
Motion by Peter,
Second.
second by John. These might be one of the donations that Barb was talking about. Let's go ahead. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. And we have a new scholarship fund. Entertain a motion to approve the following scholarship application in the name of Harold Dunbar Clifford Memorial Scholarship. It will be a variable cash award, approximately $1,200 each year for 4 years to a senior enrolling in a college program with a preference for a veterinary program.
So moved.
Motion by Peter.
Second.
Second by Jen. I believe the native of Rupert or West Rupert area?
Yes, it's Gates River, Vermont. He is an alum and he is, track and field.
Oh, okay, thank you, thank you. Any other questions or?
Nope.
Good. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. You have the sports mergers that John talked about. Entertain a motion to approve the following renewal of the sports merger between Salem Central School and Cambridge Central School for the 24-25 school year, baseball for varsity and JV levels.
So moved.
Motion by Peter,
Second.
second by John. Is there anything additional that you wanted to add?
I
from the
don't think there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
here.
it's good.
It's- Neither of us really has enough
Yeah.
players to have a team without a merged team,
Yeah.
and we do together, so it's kind of
Kind of a
marriage
marriage.
at the moment, so.
Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the following new mergers between Salem Central School and Cambridge Central School for the 24-25 school year. Girls track and field, JV and varsity levels, and boys track and field, JV and varsity levels.
So moved.
Motion by John,
Second.
second by Peter.
Has the discussion that the ad hoc committee gotten to where games will be played and all that yet? Or-
Not all of those details. The intention on both of these is that Salem will be the lead school and that things,
Now,
that was
necessarily,
expressed.
well, it's just, it's in
That
discussion.
was our intention. We don't know what their intention is. So it's really not known. I will say, at the meeting, I was asked about the track condition down there and I didn't know at that time, but, I've since talked to my kids because they're down there for soccer practice and run on their track. Cambridge's track is definitely in better shape than ours.
I think our baseball field is better
So,
than there. I can watch
so
games over
I
there.
suspect home track meets are apt to end up in Cambridge for that reason.
Okay.
So right now, we're in discussions about, we have expressed the desire to be the lead. However, there's some league affiliation, there are some, we're not sure how the league situation's working, playing out, whether or not they Adirondack. There's a thought that if we pull out and go to Wasser and Adirondack might join into Wasser anyway.
I saw that.
We don't, we want this to be able to have team competition. So we have track right now and it's an individual competition. I know in the past, we've had some parents who've gotten up and talked about how it's disappointing about relays and those types of things that we were not able to always put that together year to year. So I think that's important. We did have a meeting today, really talking about who's the lead. I think there's a lot of passion about whose letter is first, but really wanted to look at what the opportunity is. And we really have that need for the team opportunity, looking at facilities. We are requesting to say, hey, we'd like to have some meets here. But I think for the athletes in general, the quality of the surface, I would imagine matters. I was not a competitive track person, so, but that's my assumption, and I know you have a little more probably knowledge in that
There's
area.
that, there's also potentially some safety issues out here. There's some low spots in the track that someone could twist an ankle or something coming around, so, regardless of how that stuff works out, the truth is both our programs are in decent but not great shape. In terms of, we all have kids that are competing, them and us, our numbers are fairly similar. They have the same problem, right? So when we try to go to invitational meets and put together and compete in relays and stuff against other schools, we can put together a couple relay teams, but we can't fill events in a way to have any chance to actually really compete against anybody from a team sport perspective. So there's a lot of good stuff there. That if we're together, they'd actually have a chance to go in and feel like we have a chance to beat somebody instead of just, we're gonna be the last team listed with the fewest points because everybody else has way more people than we do. The downside, I will say, is that those events do limit you usually to 2 athletes per event. And so there will be events that you're allowed some wild cards. I hope the coaches will handle it the way Salem coaches always have, which is to make sure they use those wild cards so that every kid still gets to compete. I think they will, but you never know. But there will be situations, I can tell you a year ago, I have 2 boys who both run 1,600 meters. Cambridge has a young man who they played soccer with who runs 1,600 meters better than both of them. And so when they go to those things, one of my boys would not be running the 1,600. So I hope that's the choice they make, not to use the wild card for one of those and have some other kid not get to do anything. And those are kids who are a level to compete for places and stuff in those events. So there is a chance that it hurts a kid here or there from participating in a single invitational. It helps all the kids though by having a chance to go there and feel like there's a team sport to watch and to pay attention to, and that I can be a part of contributing to my team doing something. So for me personally, and I view this as it's my kid who could have been losing out in this situation, I think it's the right thing to go forward with. But I can understand where people might not think so. I can understand where Cambridge might not think so. So even if we say yes, it might not happen. And it's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen. Our kids are still gonna get to compete and all of that. So in that sense, it's really a low stress merger because it's all gonna be fine regardless. It's not that we have kids that are gonna be in a bad spot if it doesn't happen. So I just want that to be out there so we can.
And they're pretty committed to it. Sounds like, again, it's always logistics and like all of the mergers we've experienced over the 10 years, and it feels like they're happening, they're a little more bunched together the past few years. We've been adding a little more in than we did the first, probably maybe 6 years of the relationship. But there's always growing pains with any we found every merger has had some growing pains, and we've got it, we'll work on that, but with the athletes in mind. We've been floating out there that, kind of who's the lead and whose letter is first and those types of things. I know some of our kids are playing on teams where it's Cambridge, Salem, Cambridge. And in the end, it's all about the team. And I do know that there are some discussions, but they have an interim superintendent there and really talking about maybe having a lot of districts. I'm not saying we're going to do it, but I think once we have I think they're doing a search now for a replacement permanent superintendent. And I think, moving forward, possibly having discussions about a lot of merged teams when they're getting the majority of their teams merged, kind of come up and have the students contribute to maybe a common mascot or team name so that it doesn't feel like you're like our kids are on Cambridge's team or Cambridge's kids are on our team. It's like, it's one team. So there's a lot of ways to do it. We can get some feedback on that and talk about it. But I think that helps a little bit with the identity and the sensitivity of who's the lead. And for us right now, we're one of the few mergers that we're each part of a different league. And that's kind of where some of the passion comes in. Which league are we going to play in? But again, Adirondacks numbers are decreasing, and there are some cases now, as we've seen with field hockey, and we're starting to see a little bit with track, that there, and I believe previously there was a time when they were merged together and then the Adirondack pulled out. And so, we may be going to that anyway. And I think, what I try to be focused is on the opportunities for our students. And I think there are a lot of opportunities, there. So
I've heard some community members talk about the opportunities provided with the mergers and specifically the boys soccer team. And people are incredibly happy with the mergers and almost a conversation about how can you enjoy that merger a little more, either with like a shared homecoming dance, or if you go down to Cambridge here, it's quiet. Nothing seems to happen. But you go down to Cambridge and you really see those teams supporting each other and coming together. And how do we, of course we want to hear, but how do we continue to support that?
The
merge?
Cambridge Salem signs are all over the place.
They are.
More and more of them.
And I think, we've started to have those discussions because again, probably over the past 2 years, we've had several mergers. And I know there's a lot of passion to maintain our identity and we work on how we're going to create that. But I think they're committed too. I mean, they have that passion, but how can we celebrate that together? And our kids, I drive home every day through Cambridge and especially in the summer, I see our kids there, their kids up here. They are so much more kind of merged socially than us adults. And so really being mindful that our kids, I think overall have been very happy with.
The concern was raised last year about, and I've heard it again about the identity. And I think Mr. Moore probably can obviously answer this better than I can, but wrestling and football have been merged for years. And I asked this question last year of a wrestler who was on a merged team, if he felt any loss of identity. He said, no, that's their team. If 5 years from now, if all of our sports have been merged, I don't think we'll hear another word about it. I think it'll become so accepted, that it's just, that's the way it is. I mean, if the option.
I think this is, they called me 4 times. I think it's an urgent.
If the option is we either merge or we don't have a team, I don't see where that even becomes a discussion item.
Yeah, this is not a merger, we don't have a team situation. I will say the other huge advantage of doing this is that track is a really hard sport to coach. Right now, we have one coach doing boys and girls.
Yeah.
That means he's got to teach kids how to throw the discus, how to do hurdles, how to high jump, how to pole vault, how to run distance, how to sprint, all at the same time.
Yeah.
So by merging, we would conceivably have 3 coaches that can then work with kids on this, work with kids on that, work with kids on that in parallel instead of him jumping around. So I think there are great reasons to do it and I really hope it happens.
Do you have a lot?
But I don't want to create a false impression that there's anything at risk in terms of our kids getting to do track, whether this happens or not, because that's not.
Well, I mean, track wasn't the only thing. I mean, there's so many sports that.
No, there are, and there are others where that is the case.
Yeah.
So.
Do you have a long-term strategy? Do you have a plan for ensuring that, Salem is equitably distributed its share of games that as Cambridge or?
Not yet. I will say, Tom, we have a brand new athletic director and Danny left, but she's new like 2 months ago. So.
I know that a lot of that is facility based too.
She is working from what I see, it looks like she's working really hard to get up to speed and get this stuff in place. And I hope we're gonna get there. Because I think it is important. I mean, some of this stuff looks like it's in place for a very long time. Right?
And we have to plan
The football, the wrestling, the boys soccer at this point.
We don't want it to feel temporary.
Look like they're in place for a really long time. And a lot of things are already there in those programs, honestly, that are ensuring that it is. But developing a better strategy of how that happens and when it happens. And there will be situations like basketball too, where, this is really, we have a problem for a couple of years. And will you help us out? And they're helping us out.
Yeah.
So, and it may be their problem for a couple of years the next time it's something. But understand that not all of these are the same in that sense, but But the ones that look like they're long-term, having a way to perpetuate that long-term is
I'm glad you have your eye on the ball,
well,
basketball group.
trying to, this is obviously important to my kids, so that makes it clearly important to me personally. I also, I don't want to go too much off on a tangent, but sports are really important for our kids. They teach a lot of lessons. I've learned a lot of lessons in my life from high school sports that are a lot of who I am today. So I think it's really important to preserve opportunity.
And I think people want to see it continue to move in a good direction, not kind of just stay, just sit here with what it is, right? How do we make it more permanent? How do we make sure the facilities are properly represented? How do we really settle into this relationship?
Those are important discussions, but they really are tied into our building,
Facility
board and
or
a lot of other places for you.
you
But
know,
our
gym
focus
and.
tonight is really
But
just
it's really
the
just this
merger.
picture. So this is really about the track merger.
And whether we are.
Thank you, Ann, because we are getting way off.
We are-
track.
You're right, it's all.
It's good discussion, but you're right. We should be focused on track, or we're gonna be here till 2 a.m.
People have been asking.
We are
So.
looking at, we've had a lengthy meeting, so, not to cut anybody off,
No. It's time to vote on
there
this.
is more to say, I would wish you to say it, but, if we're ready. We have a motion on the table to, approve the mergers for girls and boys track, JV and varsity. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Thank you. Entertain a motion to accept the following transportation bids.
You want to go to the addendum?
Oh, yes, well, I was going to do it at 7-Eleven, so after transportation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Entertain a motion to accept the following transportation bids. From Durham Incorporated, transport 3 students from home to Salem Central School without an aid at $450 per day. Is that for 40, or 40, I'm sorry, it does say 440. The hour getting late, sorry, my brain's starting to get fatigued here. From Durham Incorporated, transport 1 student from Salem Central School to St. Catherine's, Monday and Friday PM, Monday AM, Friday PM, for $358 per day. And again, from Durham Incorporated, transport 1 student from Salem Central School District to Saratoga High School AM only without an aid for $327 per day.
So moved.
Second.
Still thinking they buy a minivan.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. And we did have an additional action item on the addendum. Entertain a motion to approve the following renewal of the sports merger between Salem Central School and Cambridge Central School and Greenwich Central School for the 24-25 school year in the area of lacrosse at the modified level.
So moved.
Motion by Don,
Second.
second by Peter.
So I just wanted to let you know that, there is a chance that Cambridge may not have any players. I don't know if that changes anything if they pull out, because it's so early. It could just be Salem, Greenwich, but if so, then we can amend it. But I think at least this gets our paperwork in and all of that, correct? Okay, Mr. Moore's representing tonight. Because I think this is really no, he had to leave, so,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, all right.
Just for everybody, this is modified only because that's where our kids have expressed interest in this. So the kids who played last year were 7th graders or 8th graders this year. Next year, we will presumably be looking at JV. And so just so everybody understands where it's going.
Yep, and the idea is to phase it in, the merger, because it's a new sport, it's a new team, and they had expressed interest for this. And so we will continue, some of the parents are asking, if we will be continuing to the JV and varsity levels, and if we have the interest, then we would be maintaining that. The other piece is there is an occasion where an 8th grader could be on JV, and if somehow that came up, then it's a sub-varsity merger, and we could just go ahead later at that time and approve it. So I think, this just kind of confirms that we're still in the partnership.
Any further questions or concerns? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Moving on to
All right, it was a long time coming, waiting for your turn. See how these things work, the board, we build to these things. So again, just introducing Mason, and I thought it would just be nice to have Mason be the first to share board news, if the rest of the board is okay with that, in case there were questions or further discussion. All right.
Well, today we had our National Honor Society ceremony, which we already talked about. We had 7 in total inducted, 2 of which were seniors, 5 were juniors. I believe it was last week we had the Sweethearts and Heroes program return. I know they returned sometime after a few years. They were around when I was in elementary or high school. Between their programs and the different years, I see that they have improved a lot, especially with the new Circles program, which I know a lot of people in the school weren't so sure about it based on what they heard, but afterwards I can see all groups of students from BOCES to normal kids enjoy the program and say things that they have not yet once seen.
Not to say they're not.
They're very normal kids, actually.
Average students.
You mean it,
I apologize.
You can get away, they yell at us for saying that.
I apologize, I mean language.
We know what you mean.
But anyway, the program did work out very well, and I hope to see them return one day for future students. The drama club is working on Groundhog's Day. A lot of students have been working on this, and it has been very well received based on the practices we have done. A lot of the teachers that are in there seeing it, they enjoy what we have been putting on for them. Some time ago, we had the fall concert, first time in the high school gym in a while. That worked out pretty well. The government senior class has been doing service hours for their class requirement. They need 10 hours to complete. And they have been all around Salem, for example, the craft fair, as well as just helping build the stage for the play. They have been everywhere. Doing a lot of service. Picture Day was after the last board meeting in October. The yearbook members worked all day for that, some working quite literally all day, some of them working only about half the day. That worked out very well, and we have the retake day coming up. We had the Veterans Day Assembly a few weeks ago. A lot of students got together to provide certain parts of that. For example, the high school band played all of the different anthems of each branch. And for example, Mason Hayward and Socrates Fraunhofer II created a video for the Veterans Day Assembly with a bunch of different grades thanking the veterans for all of their service, organized by Mrs. Carr. I do apologize, I don't know a lot about the FFA and sports events. Sorry, Mrs. Maxwell. But I believe they are all going well and having a great time.
And so Mason got his official word last week, and we just met this week to work, to have our onboarding meeting. So next month, we look forward to having more information, and probably we'll have some FFA info to share. People will start to know, to get the word out, get the word to Mason, to do some shout outs, so.
Good job.
And I just wanted to say about the Sweetheart and Heroes, and we did have a little conversation. We had our onboarding meeting the other day about the circles, because I think it is something that until you experience it, it is something that you might think, oh, I don't know how that would work, or how that would work with kids. And it was very well received. And one of the things that we're working on, and it would be nice to have Mason and maybe a few other students talk about, to work with us on, is they asked us if we might be interested in working together and maybe have them come like on a regular basis. So this year they'll come back at, I think, 2 more times to kind of work and start to, again, with those community building circles, work with our team, our teachers that are trained. But then they could come back next year. So we do have social emotional learning framework and requirements New York State requires. And we've tried some different programs, and you can have these programs where, hey, we watch a video about character and we do a worksheet, or we could really work and have a really more interactive social emotional experience. And so one of the things is, if we could bring them in regularly, not only could they help facilitate and build our circle culture and community, but we can start working on having our students leading circles. as well as have our students being mentors. It's called the Brace program, and students can go down and they adopt classrooms and they work with younger students on bully drills. And it really just builds this whole culture of community where our students are mentoring and helping students. So that's something that we're really excited about working towards, you know, as I've been talking and Mr. Moore and Mr. Switzer have been talking to other kids. It seems like something that kids are excited about. Possibly doing more. They obviously love working with Sweetheart and Heroes, and if we can kind of get their, you know, stamp of approval and maybe get our own t-shirts, as we work alongside them. I just think it's something that'd be really great. And even our teachers, are embracing it, at the faculty and staff level. We're working on that as well. And so there's so many different opportunities. Even some schools now are in year 3 or 4, and they've created service learning opportunities in terms of credits and classes where you can earn credits to be part of the peer mentoring and or being a circles leader, those types of things. So it's something that we'll talk about more and get some feedback from our students and whether or not we want to work on that in the future. So either way, we have to satisfy the social emotional requirements, but I think this is just a very organic way to do it without just purchasing something and going through the motions and maybe not having a connection with it. So it's exciting. So we're getting a lot of great feedback. And keep it going.
Yep, that's awesome.
Thank you for sharing on the
Thank you.
first time.
Welcome.
One more thing,
Sure.
I do want to offer another apologize to the BOCES community. I did not mean that in any way, shape, or form.
It's okay. It's a hard one. Thank you. Duly noted. We'll put it in the record.
Any other board members have?
I have one short thing to say at 9:15.
It's actually not 9:15. That's.
Oh, it was like, it's already 9? Thank goodness. Okay.
Yes. All right. I'm actually really happy with how Julie has weaved in music and drama back into our day between the Veterans Day celebration, this meeting here. We're not gonna give up on it. We love it, but we need to make sure we have our ELA scores coming up. Fighting for it. We're gonna keep weaving it in every way we can, every possible venue or opportunity. And I think that's great, and I think that's what we should do. So cheers to that, and thank you, Julie.
Thank you. I mean, it is our point of pride. It is amazing. We're so lucky that we get to scoop up Mrs. Kropinski. They are the perfect pair. And we have dedicated community members, and we're gonna find a way to make it work. And this just seeing them, and they're still 2 weeks away from their full performance. To me, they looked pretty performance ready right there, and it's very exciting. We're so proud of that.
We'll never forget that.
Yeah,
I'll never forget that moment.
it's amazing. And we have our Christmas I call it the Christmas pageant, but I think there's a better name for it. But I where we have all of our families can come in and all our classes are performing, and it's just really a special time of the year for music and drama.
Perfect. Thank you.
I got a few things too.
I do.
Do you wanna go?
No, are we on the board?
Yes, that's board news.
Oh, news or, okay. I'll wait until. Well, or-
It's blending
Go
in.
for it, yeah.
Yeah. News, released, I think November 8th is the date on it online, but, the AP honor roll, which, the Associated Press is not the AP. We're talking about advanced placement courses, which the College Board is responsible for. College Board started this list a year ago. The first list came out based on class of 2023. This list is based on the class of 2024. They recognize schools that both have a depth of kids participating in AP classes and have those kids succeeding. And so the standard to get on the list is 40% of your graduating seniors have taken an AP exam. 25% of them have gotten a 3 or better on an AP exam, which they interpret as passed. There is no pass fail on an AP exam. It's 0 to 5. But 3 is a number that at a lot of colleges, you can get a credit for the class. And so 25% of your students have to have done that. And then 2% of your students have to have taken at least 5 AP classes and passed. So you have to be offering this to a broad set of your kids, getting those kids to participate, getting those kids to pass, to get on the list. Then within the list, they break it down into platinum, gold, silver, and bronze. Platinum, I don't know exactly how they weight those things and come up with a score, but platinum represents the 7% of schools that are the highest. Gold is the next 7, silver is 10, and then bronze is everybody else who hit those numbers, which is a huge accomplishment in and of its own right. Salem this last year, what I'm getting to, was named a gold honoree on this list. This is not just a list of public high schools. This is a list of all high schools. This includes private preparatory schools. This includes selective schools in New York City, where they're really only getting the best and brightest 8th graders in New York City to walk in. Almost all the platinum schools fit into either the private or the selective high schools. Most of the gold schools are either also in that or are in wealthy suburban areas. For a small rural school to achieve that, I think is absolutely astounding.
2 years from now.
Huge credit to the class of 2024, but also to obviously very few teachers, thank them, but to all their teachers, because you have to be prepared to walk into that classroom to take an AP test, to everyone who helped feed those kids, help keep the school clean so that those kids could focus on learning instead of worrying about other things. It's a credit to the whole school, it's a credit to parents, it's a credit to our guidance department who is encouraging kids to try those classes. And a credit to the taxpayers who continue to pass budgets that allow us to continue to have those AP teachers, because ultimately, if you squeeze things too tight, that's not required by the state. So it's something that would go away. You have a daughter that's in that class too. But so huge accomplishment. And I also want to point out that the year before, in 2023, Salem was silver on that list. So both years at an absolutely astounding level. I believe that we are the only school in the BOCES district to be above a bronze level either year. So this is an outstanding school. I mean, this is a measure of college prep. It's not everything. Those BOCES kids are important. And even non-BOCES kids who aren't necessarily on that are important, and doing the best for those kids is important too. And this in no way says we're doing the best for those kids or not. But the job we're doing in that area is awesome. And I think especially after we spent a while looking at those proficiency scores for our 3rd to 8th graders, to realize that while there's bad news, there's also a lot of good news out there, I think is really important. So kudos to everybody.
Thank you.
Really.
And we'll be doing a shout out. We have our person one day a week right now. We kind of pulled some things together to do that. And so we'll be doing a shout outs in my slides tomorrow. But I know, thank you, John, because he has a great passion and he did a lot of kind of
I've been
a lot of fact finding and data. So I appreciate your bringing that. We talked about it, and I obviously too, I can't put everything in there because I'll get run out of here by making my report an hour, but we're definitely gonna do some publicizing of this. So you'll see that going out as a point of pride for us in the future.
Thank you.
Well, this is completely on the other side of things and at the elementary world, I think, but I was recently, it's very important, at teacher conferences, and so a big thank you to the teachers for the time and energy they put into that. I know it's not always easy, but it's well appreciated, much appreciated. But when I was leaving, my husband and I were leaving, in the main hallway, there were these displays, these structures that the longhouses that the students had made, and they were amazing.
They're always fun to look at every year.
No, oh my gosh, I could not believe the amount of detail that was put into each one of them, and they were amazing looking. I was like, Jeremy, look at these things, like look at each one, but they were so great,
Every
so.
year, they're all so different. It's amazing that it's not like, okay, every year they kind of all look the same.
No, they're all very different,
Creativity
but the
and
creativity and the
materials.
natural materials, and so I just wanted to point that out,
And
because I thought
fun-
it was really cool.
We'll do
Fun
one next
fact
year.
to add to that is, that those students, they, other classes make appointments to come and hear about the longhouses, and
That's
they,
great.
all of the students represent their longhouse, and they pair up, and it could be a sixth grade class, a third grade
Yeah.
class, a second grade. They sign up, they get some, public speaking experience, and they get to share their knowledge. And what was really great, it was, kind of in the vicinity when they were, presenting to the sixth grade. And it was nice because those sixth graders had been through that and then could go and give them some feedback, and they could really have a conversation about it. And so, really just again, that sharing of knowledge and that peer-to-peer kind of networking is, you know, receiving, not only presenting, but being the receiver of that and giving feedback is quite.
Well, it was so well done, yeah.
I've got two things to share. First is a point of personal privilege. As the only veteran on the board, I was asked by Mrs. Carr to come in and do the board's recognition of the day. I truly appreciated that. It's something we've missed since COVID, and obviously getting things back in line and back together. In the preliminary, sitting in the cafeteria with the other veterans in there, everyone had missed it. Everyone had I don't want to say they've cheated, but they had missed it. It was it's always a wonderful experience. Each of us, I think, to a man and woman would tell you that an event like that means so much more than a free meal at Applebee's. It's the recognition of veterans in this town is obvious, it's not a surprise. As I said at the gathering, 3% of our population serves today, 3%, that's it. And last year we had a graduating class of 31, and 2 of them are in boot camp. So it's a whole lot more than 3% here. Thank you from all of us in the community to Mrs. Carr and to the students who put this all together. It truly is appreciated. Second point, speaking of both these kids, I was kind of taken back today in a very pleasant way. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be nice, and my grandson's gonna be as mad at me for doing this as you are embarrassed by it. My grandson, I've raised him since he was 4 years old, and he's a senior this year. He has been out of district placed because of some issues that I won't go to details about, since 5th grade. He's in a CTE program in BOCES right now and is thriving and is doing well and is finally passed enough exams to get a Regents diploma. And has plans to go to Arizona for college next year and is driving me crazy with all the Caterpillar stuff. But I was approached today after the safety committee meeting and asked if, since he's still a available student, I'm gonna choke up here and I'm sorry. Would he like to be in the yearbook and walk across the stage at graduation? He was remembered. It was important, as important to me as it was to him. And that's what this district, that's what we do. And it never ceases to amaze me, how much this district puts into the students that go through here. And how much what the amount of effort, time and energy that's put in is obvious when you look at the output on the other end. So thank you to all those involved in everything that I just said there. And I couldn't be prouder of this district and sitting here at this table.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Peter, for sharing. Anybody else? No? I think I'm on the bottom. Gotta get choked up, I'm sorry.
So I wiped that last time.
Does anybody have any topics or issues that we should put on the radar for any committee work or?
I think it's important to note that 4 of us did attend the New York State School Board Association's convention last several weeks ago in New York City. It was a wonderful, excellent experience, it always is. The amount of breakout sessions they have there leaves you stunned as to, like, I can't go to everything I want to get to. The only downside was $17 for a cup of coffee and a blueberry muffin in the morning. But New York City is New York City. The last session that I went to was, I thought, the most impactful for me, was the community schools. You all know that I'm a nudge about that. The community schools presentation, and I was able to finally, I've sat through the education department's presentation. I sat through New York State's education department presentation about it. I sat through everybody telling you this is how you should do it. But was finally able to sit down and listen to two superintendents who said, this is how we have done it. I talked to Mrs. Carr about that, and I'm going to pass on the contact information to her for the two districts in Tarrytown and Peekskill that have accomplished it. And some of the stuff they've done has just been amazing. We hear a lot of talk about, why do we have a consultant for this, a consultant for that, a consultant for this, a consultant for that? The results may not be seen today, but they'll be seen tomorrow. And that's what I took from that presentation on the outcome of community schools and the hard work that went into it. So.
One of the things I do want to put on the radar is that we could maybe have more discussion or thought about. I do think it would be prudent to have a finance committee, not a finance, facilities committee. I don't think we'll really need to convene until maybe, January, once we get the building conditions report, just to be able to, it's very extensive, and certainly there'll be a presentation to the full board, but to really be able to sit down and kind of talk about the different priorities, how we may attack them, and be able to streamline that for the board's purpose and discussion, to really focus on those items, as well as be in kind of representative of the board in some of them more detailed conversations, again, of when we get involved in the roof planning and replacement, those types of things, just being representative of the board with respect for the time. We'll be getting into budget season, those types of things. So I think it's nice to have some of that subcommittee as well. And then as we're moving into next year, really considering our next project, kind of help doing some of the legwork on planning kind of that process. So I know there are one or two that only have one committee, so maybe I don't know how you want to decide who's on it, but I think it might be something to consider for the board to consider. I know there's a lot of meetings and a lot of subcommittees, but I do think that might be helpful.
Yeah.
If people do have an interest in availability, if you would just let me know, then we'll put it in the hat and we'll take a look. Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then, obviously, there'll still be a lot coming at the full board and at these meetings, but, just to help digest and kind of prioritize what we're talking about at the meetings. And, we would obviously involve Mrs. McGregor and, Mr. Yakubek in that process as well. It'll be important, and then along the way, some others will be involved. And I think, again, we probably won't really be talking about this till maybe January.
Right.
Okay. And we haven't had when do you anticipate that they would be presenting the results of the building survey?
So right now, we have the framework of the survey. They presented it to us, and just making sure is there anything that we want to add, or just something that stood out that, and so it's being input into the New York State, portal, to be reported. However, that is not a viewer-friendly way to digest that report. So they put together, and I have not seen their work, but they put together a report, pictures, photos, all of those things. And so it does take a little time. I would anticipate, they haven't given us, January, February. Right now, they're inputting everything into the portal, so.
So
submission and then-
probably coincidentally with that, when we get that information, that would be the start off to how we were going to
Mhm.
digest that information and move it forward. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think so.
Busy board.
Yes, very busy, a lot going on.
Can I throw in too, I just want to thank Ann and whoever else, I assume Julia and whoever else was involved in amending the way we're going about our agenda.
Yeah.
I think it's an improvement, so thank you for whoever put the time in to do it.
Much more user friendly
So
too.
much.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna go way faster, especially when we have 300 appointments on there that we're just gonna pass. on. So Thank you.
I do think it will work out to be, more cohesive meeting for us and. Thank you. So moving on, we have this is a busy time of year, not just for the board, but for the entire school. A lot of things to remember. They're all listed here. We do have our blueprint stakeholder review tomorrow at 4 o'clock, between 4 and 8. So, sounds like we'll have a good sized group there for that. And the music department is busy on many different things and, oh my goodness. The kindergarten fees. And we have our meetings are listed there as well. And we are still working on a date to get together to talk about some norms and meeting procedures so that we can begin to build an onboarding document that would help us, talk about how we do things in the order in which we do them. So we are working on it. Is there any other additions to those? At this point, I'd like to open the meeting back up for public comment. If there is anybody here who has any questions or concerns that they would like to share with the board, they would come to the podium.
I want to remind the board how critical it is for the administration and the board to work with those schools that they merge with sports. There was a football team that was comprised of 3 different school districts, ranked number 1 in the state, that had to cancel the remaining part of their season and playoffs because of allegations of inappropriate behavior. So it's not just wins and losses and numbers and whether we're going to be Salem, Cambridge, or Cambridge, Salem. And it's critical because all 3 of those superintendents and their boards had to work on that. It's very timely that tomorrow's meeting on refreshing the blueprint from 4 to 8 here tomorrow is a very timely subject because there's a heightened sense of urgency with the incoming administration and everything that you've read or heard in the news about the impact on the Department of Education and some of the proposals, which include a very big push for school choice. Every school district in Washington County has suffered a decline in enrollment, and Salem is no exception. It's important tomorrow and in subsequent meetings for stakeholders in the board and administration to recognize the potential impact of school choice, whether it's next year or 2 years from now, and how essential it is to position the district in a way that they can promote the successes, to enhance communication, to take the lampshade off the bulb and let the good news shine, because it may become very competitive. And there are schools in the area that will seek to recruit and attract learners. So it's really important that this opportunity is invested in time and resources to look ahead to the future in that prospect. And then, Peter, one last thing. After I retired as a school superintendent in New York, I took a position as an administrator in Bennington. And I started in the summer, and they had a summer program. So I was introduced, Dr. Mugis, the new principal at Molly Stark Elementary School. Molly Stark happens to be a community school, one of the few in the area, expanded mental health resources, and I learned other opportunities, because as the secretary took me around the school, I was introduced to the kids in the summer program. This is your new principal, Dr. Mudritz, and I didn't realize that very few children have a notion that a doctor, someone could have that title and not be in medicine. When I was walking around and one of the 6-year-olds came up and said, Dr. Mudritz, could you look at this? Well, they have a dental program, and the child assumed I was a dentist. And there are days I wish I was instead of a superintendent or principal. But it's important to look at opportunities for a community school and really.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yes, yes, it is. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Any additional questions or comments for the board?
Yeah, we have.
Would you please come up to the podium? And
Introduce myself, Tanya Goddard, and been here for a long time, graduate myself and raised our children here. We just found out some very disappointing news. Wyatt and several of the seniors were cut from the basketball team in Cambridge. They said it's nothing in reference or reflecting their efforts. Wyatt was set aside and explained that he did everything that the coach asked him to do. He was a great defensive player, and the coach said, I'm very apologetic, Wyatt. I've been put into this situation, and I just have too many numbers. I can't place you.
You got it, White said that. So also, he was saying that there was 25 to 30 kids that actually tried out for this Cambridge team. Why are we sending our Salem kids to Cambridge if they're just gonna get cut, or only 1 or 2 of them are gonna make it, where they all played last year?
We
There
have
was
little numbers.
There was varsity numbers last year. I mean, there was only 8 kids on the team last year. But I feel that you could field the team with 8 kids.
The max that I believe you're allowed to have on a basketball team is 15. So Cambridge had those 15 numbers
And Cambridge
already.
had 10 kids that were seniors, so.
How are they gonna cut their own seniors? They cut our seniors.
And I don't know about the other kids that made the team or who else made the team.
There was at least
But he
6 that
said-
we know that went from Salem to try out for the Cambridge basketball team. There was at least 6 players. He knows at least right now confirmed that 3 out of the 6 have been cut. He doesn't, we don't know about the other 3. He's trying to find out. I just think that I don't think this needs to be a cookie cutter decision. We can't just say like automatically that we're gonna merge because that's gonna be the solution to give our numbers. We gotta let the kids try out. And I understand that there's gonna be like conflicts because you have to adhere to rules of the section and the athletic rules and all that. You gotta give notice, you gotta do stuff like that. Cause my son's coming at me going, I'm not sitting around a whole winter season doing nothing. Nope, ain't happening. Who can I join for indoor track? So I can prepare for my outdoor track season. I'm not sitting here, but I know the rules. And I'm not gonna tell Wyatt, but in order to join another track team, he had to have that notice in at the beginning of September, correct?
The merger that.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to be notified. So he's not gonna be able to get a chance to join an indoor track team because that notice wasn't put in September at the deadline. So you've definitely screwed over the kids. That's really disappointing.
And if it is a coaching matter, I mean, I've got many years of youth baseball coach with all these kids that are seniors now. So it's like, I would do it for free. And I know several other parents that would do it for free.
I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
We do make the decision, as you say, early on, and the numbers that we had at the time. we made the best decision we could at that time. And.
Well, what,
Sorry.
is there any recourse? Is there any ability to have this discussion so that Salem could have their own team? Could that ever be discussed?
Or possibly move JV kids up? Do they still do that, or I'm not 100% sure?
So I think we need to, this is news to me that they were making their cuts today, so I really need to kind of digest this, look into this a little more. There are a lot of parameters around this. We also do have, we had quite a bit of feedback pushing kids to play up who weren't ready, and it was quite devastating. We several years ago had a soccer team, and we thought we were going to have the numbers, and then at the last minute we didn't, and we couldn't have a team. There was no opportunity for those kids to play, and there's a risk of, looking at this, it did not look like we had kids with the ability to have a competitive and or to even get enough kids on the team to be eligible for the varsity level, just because there's this gap. It's the COVID impact. But let me look into that. Myself or Mr. Moore will get in touch with you and talk it through with you a little more. I know Mr. Moore will talk to Wyatt. I'm certain of that.
Yeah.
I'm just as surprised as you are. And I had
Yeah.
no idea they were making cuts today, and I don't know if they've communicated with us
I mean,
or not, so.
yeah. Wyatt had like day surgery yesterday, and he was so upset that he missed practice yesterday because he was like, I can't show them that I'm not gonna put forth the effort because I'm gonna get cut. He's like, you don't understand. He's like, Mom, there's like 30 plus kids down there trying to make this team.
So I don't want to take the time from the others, but we will definitely, we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Mr. Moore and I will talk about it tomorrow and try to get more information.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Sorry, guys.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I mean, I guess I'll just share. While we're talking about workers. Megan Aubrey, my son plays sports. With this news, you're also looking at those boys coming back down to our JV numbers, who, according to what my son was saying, we already had 10 to 12 kids at the JV level, not including those kids that went up to try out. So you have those kids who just got cut, those who are not seniors and not allowed to play at the JV level, who will be coming back down to our JV team, rounding out our JV team at 15 kids, give or take. That's a huge number for a basketball team. That means the weaker kids on the JV team probably won't get game playing time. The coach will play the better kids. With 15 kids, that means there are going to be boys who show up at practice every day, give it their all, and do not see a minute of game time. That's not acceptable to me as a parent in a small school. The other concern I have with mergers is the majority of games and practices that are at Cambridge. This fall, you had pretty much everything but one sport at Cambridge. That's over an hour a day of bus travel time for our students, not including the downtime they have waiting for other teams to finish their practices that is not being utilized for their academic time. That is the main reason my son chose not to play football this year, because he was concerned about having time for his academics. The bus that used to pull in all fall was between 7 and 8 o'clock at night after it left school here. So our kids did not get home until between 7:30 and 8 p.m. to start their homework, to eat dinner, to unwind after their day. They left home by 7:15 if you take my bus, did not get home until 8 p.m. Please consider that impact when you choose to fight or not fight for the utilization of our fields for our sports. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Thank you for taking the time to share with us.
I don't have an item. I can.
So at this time, our work is done. And motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. And John? All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0.
Gotta be quick and adjourn.
Yeah, only three of us saying, yeah.
Did you stop the recording?